Come on, Brian.
Well, you got to get rid of the thumbnail, Danny. That'd be a good start.
You normally introduce it. Bloody hell, Brian. Shocking.
There we go. Great start.
Absolutely
Great
shocking,
start.
Brian.
Here we go. In the blue for real. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everyone, wherever you are in the world. Welcome back to another edition of Tottenham on Tour. Today, we've got a special show on. We've got, you'll see below, who will be introduced very shortly, a couple of people brand new to the channel. There may be a third, but we're going to have a debate about a discussion about quite a few things today. So obviously you got me. I'll introduce myself. I don't think I need an introduction at the moment. Brian Dagul, Tottenham on Tour, seen here, there, and everywhere, outside of training ground, outside of football stadium, and yeah, this is the channel where is the home of the Dagul Ran, and obviously my partner in crime tonight. We've got Mr. Danny Kyriacou. How are you, brother?
I'm good. It's nice to be on the show again. It's been a while, actually, Brian. I can't remember the last time I did a show on my own channel. It's been a long time.
Well, you turned up right. You turned up right at the end last week, didn't you?
Yeah, that's true.
You turned up right at the end last week.
Just get my 2 pence worth in.
Exactly. So let's get the introductions in. So right below me we have. 1 second.
I'll do the introductions then. So right below Mr. Brian, we have none other than Ian Lubin. Mr. Lubo, how are you doing, my friend?
Good evening. Pleased to be here. Delighted to be here. Looking forward to the conversation.
So am I. I think it's going to be a good show. I think we've got a good schedule planned for the show tonight.
We certainly do. And Lubo, it's a pleasure to finally have you on the show. Obviously, Danny and I have done some Twitter Spaces with you today. Previously. So it's always good to get new people on the channel. And then someone who's joined us for the first time on this show, but he has been seen on other channels. We normally have the two Brians on this channel, but today we've got the two Ians. So we've got Lubo and Shaggy. Shaggy, how are you today?
Oh, he's on
You're on mute.
That's right.
We're on fire. This is going.
There we go.
Yeah, is that better? Yeah,
better,
I'll let you do it, Daddy. Yeah, I'm very good.
Right.
Thank you. An absolute pleasure to be on the show. I think it could be interesting. Let's get some views here. There's nearly 50 people, I think, in the chat I'm looking at. So hopefully we'll have some interesting conversation.
Well, it's just about to get a bit more interesting because the fifth person has just joined us.
Our final guest for tonight.
The final guest.
Let's bring him in. Let's bring him in.
I'll bring him in right now. People may know him on Twitter Spaces. People may know him on a couple of streams. Now, we're going to have a nice, easy, chilled out conversation today. And we have Jay. Jay, how you doing, buddy?
I'm good. Thank you very much for having me, boys. It's they told me I had to beat up a guy that looked like Levy before I was allowed on the stream. So,
that's right.
There's a bald man who just got aggressively slapped for no reason. I'm sorry. Thanks for bringing me on, boys. It's a pleasure to be here. More positive news over the last few days. So
definitely,
I feel like maybe the bite has gone a little bit out of you boys in like maybe no still yeah okay.
Nope. But that's going to come later. A lot of the things we're going to be talking about today. Danny's done his research. We're going to be talking a bit about the trust.
Yep.
And just generally what they are, what they do. And then we're going to talk about things like where is this club going, what direction, where do we see it going, and deep dive into certain things. But Daniel, I'll hand over to you now because you've got all the great documents and all the stuff you need. So I'll hand over to you, brother. But sure. Big up to the 59 people already in here.
Yeah, I want to just say hello, welcome to everyone as well in the comments. And I know there's some other people going to join later on. So should we start? Let's get up the first topic we're going to discuss. So, who is the trust and basically what is their purpose? So, I mean, I think with this question, I think there's a lot of misconceptions of what the trust do and who they are, what limitations they have, because I've come to learn new things as well about the trust in the last couple of months and just generally kind of there's a lot of fans that I don't think really understand what they're there to do or what they can do essentially. And I think we'll go. Obviously, one of the persons who we want to speak to, obviously, is Mr. Lubo, because he's been a long-standing member of the trust. So he might have a bit more insight than most people would. So we wanted to kind of just get Ian's opinion first and kind of understand a bit more about it. So over to you, Mr. Lubo.
Okay, well, I joined the trust. I'm a life member. I joined the trust in 2001. They started off having meetings in the Irish Centre, just around the corner from the bridge on White Hart Lane. It's carried on. It's 20, 21, 22 years down the line. They're heavily involved. They work with the club, try and work with the club as much as they can. They take supporters' concerns to the club. They work on things like ticketing, pricing when renewals are going out, Champions League ticket pricing. There are charity events. Just sort of looking at the trust, that they have a newsletter that comes out on email every month, beginning of every month. Just sort of some of the things here: fan-led review of football governance that they're waiting for final confirmation, I think, from the government, because the government wanted, after the European Super League debacle, to have a fan on the board. I'm not sure the Tottenham board are going to be very happy about that, personally, not my personal opinion, but it will happen. They give advice for fans travelling to away games. They give advice for fans travelling into Europe. They discuss with the Premier League fixture changes regarding televised games. Again, looking after the fans. I mean, their aim basically is to help the supporters, look after the supporters' interests, as are all the fans' trusts across the country. They're talking regularly with other supporters' trusts about issues. I mean, coming up soon, there's ticketing meeting with the club, the transport issues, fan-led review of football governance, fan engagement at THST. I think these guys do it for no money. They do it for the love of the club, and I think people forget that. They take a lot of time and effort and spend a lot of money on trying to help the supporters. They can only do so much with the club. At the end of the day, they'll go to the club and they'll ask the club certain things, and they'll push for certain changes. And if the club say no, there's not too much as a trust they can do. What are they meant to do? But I personally think they do a lot of good. They take a lot of flack. I see on social media. I don't know why. I'm not sure if people expect, because they are the official Tottenham Hotspur Supporters Trust, that they can actually make sure that changes are made. They can't guarantee that with the club. And
So,
not dealing with.
Can I just come in on that in 1 second? Because I'll let you cut. The reason I want to come in on this is because I openly put my hand up and say I was one of the people that gave them, when I came over for the NFL protest, not the ones just gone, the year before, and the other protests we arranged, I was spitting fire at the trust. I was absolutely gunning for them, thinking that what they are they're to put our fires out. Like, if we're unhappy with the board, we're unhappy with this, they go there and sort it out. They go there and do this. And I think it was the letters support, or the ST, the Supporters Trust, which kind of I imagine that mean with a different meaning. So when I took a step back and someone explained to me the things that you state, then you take a step back and realise they're not here just for talking about what's going on the pitch. They do a lot of stuff off the pitch. We'll get onto on the pitch stuff in a minute, but I just wanted to say I was one of those that, and I would always say when I'm wrong, I put my hands up and I gunned for them in the wrong way.
Yeah, no, they do a good job. For me, they do a good job. There's only so much they can do, and I think as long as people realise that, but they are a good sounding board. They can put pressure on the board. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't.
Yeah. Do you know, to add on to that, right? I'll be honest as well. I used to think that the trust don't do enough. When I saw the NFL, the Super League stuff, and there wasn't much coming out from the trust and all this kind of stuff, I just felt that there wasn't enough pressure from their side of things. But then, as the months go on and time goes on, when I learned more about the trust and the stuff that I've heard in terms of what Levy's ideas are for the trust, if it was up to him, there wouldn't be a trust. So it kind of makes me understand more about they can only do so much. It's like if they ask certain questions, the club don't have to answer. They're not entitled to answer. There's no legal obligation for them to basically say, well, it's our club. We can do what we want with it, right? We don't have to tell you what we're doing. It's at the end of the day, they can do what they want with it. And as us as fans might not like what they do, right, or all the decisions they do, because as fans, all we want to see is results on the pitch. We want to see trophies. We want to see competing for stuff. But it's just that I think that's where there's the misconception. I know fans. I used to feel very strongly against the trust. I'll be honest, but now it's not that I've changed my views in a dramatic way, but I'm more understanding of how they can try and get their message across and try to get answers from the club. What we will do, we will discuss the two statements that have come out recently from the trust as well. And I know that recently in the last year, they've had a change of people at the top on the board. And I think maybe from what I understand from speaking to people is that they're going to try and put more pressure on the club to try and get more answers on a more consistent basis than maybe we hadn't had before. I can't say because I don't know the people who used to run the trust before. But that's just maybe how I feel. I want to come to you, Jay. How do you feel about all of this and how the trust is and how you feel about the trust?
So in terms of the trust, I think it's kind of like, it's almost like having a blunt knife, and so I don't begrudge the trust in what they do because I know that they have limited powers. I come into it with very open eyes with that sort of thing. I think that they basically do a thankless job because whenever they pass out any sort of opinion, whoever's not part of that opinion will automatically be like, you don't represent me. Like that's not representative of what I think, which is in a very thankless task because at no point can you ever get complete consensus. You're also, they're basically trying to catch a slippery eel in Enoch and Levy. So you have in terms of what they do, there's certain aspects of things they could do better, even from their own point of view. Their transparency isn't fantastic at times. Sometimes they just drop something in your lap and you're like, when the fuck did this happen? But by the same token, they're trying, and I'm, when somebody does something that I'm not willing to do, it's not a case of me saying this is shit or that shit. It's me saying, okay, are you doing a good job? Do you have good intentions? Are you coming with clean hands? And I think that to a large extent, they're not cronies of the board. They're not extensions of the board. They're independent to a decent extent, and they try their best. It's not perfect, but they have, in what I see and what I observe, limited power, limited authority, not much say. So it's like a little chihuahua biting, like nipping at your heel. Do you know what I mean? There's not much they can do, but they can, they can make a bit of noise, they can make a bit of irritation, and I appreciate them for that.
Well, they were fighting against big increases for season tickets, Jay.
Yeah,
which they largely succeeded doing.
Yeah, the thing is that it's the things that they do when they succeed, they're not very heralded. There's not much razzmatazz around it when they do something good. But if they do something that somebody disagrees with or something, everyone's shouting at it from the rooftop. So yeah, I agree, and I think they've done some good stuff, and I think it's quite a thankless task. So I don't. There's no negativity from my side towards.
Sure. I mean, since the ground opens, my season ticket's gone up by 1.5%. I know we had COVID, but that is a lot to do with the trust.
That's impressive.
And and the pressure that they have put on the club to keep the prices down. You had COVID, you had lockdown, you had 2 seasons where there was very little football, if any. You had crowds of 4,000 coming in. So obviously, they probably wanted to, but the trust were pushing, and prices were held down. What happens for next season, God knows. But,
so let's bring Shaggy in because Shaggy hasn't spoken. And Shaggy, what's been your impressions on this discussion when we're talking about the trust? Is he? Oh, he's on mute again.
Oh, he has to unmute himself.
Yeah.
Oh, he's unmuted himself.
Can you hear us, Ian?
Does he hear us?
Yeah,
He's not on mute. He's not on mute. He's not on mute. It's his speaker on his end. His mic on his end.
He's got that Daniel Levy Wi-Fi, hasn't he?
Jay, what you're saying is music to my ears. Why haven't you
Listen. Levy's low hanging fruit. As somebody that likes to make jokes, I'm all here for that. These low hanging Daniel Levy jokes. You know what I mean?
Okay, that's all good. That's all good. Let's see if Ian's. Ian, can you hear us?
Yeah, I can hear you.
No, Shaggy.
No, it's
I cannot hear you at all,
It
Shaggy.
seems like every time you say Shaggy, he loses the ability to speak.
Shaggy, try come back out and come back in again. Try come back out and come back in again. All right, we'll get him back on.
Well,
Yeah, go on, Brian. Do you want to go through some questions, maybe? See if
I start a few things. I mean, we'll start off straight away. And this is what we're going to bring up the statements in shortly out on Wembley.
Yeah.
I said, if nothing, the wording and the questions the trust asked the club recently were absolutely spot on. Naturally, the true coward that is Levy and his enablers refuse to answer them. We are gonna touch this, but let's just quickly check until Ian. Shaggy, can you hear us?
Can you hear me now?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Yeah, that's okay.
High definition.
We're cooking with gas. So Ian, your thoughts on the topic at hand?
Yeah, it's interesting because there was one thing, I'll come back onto it in a sec, that the trust did that I thought was absolutely idiotic, and Ian maybe want to come on to this. But we've always had, I mean, I'm going back, maybe some older people, Ian Lubin may remember, the old Tottenham Supporters Club that was in, I think, Wilmington House, which was in a little building halfway between the entrance to the main stand and the Park Lane end. But football was so different then. The supporters, the board, there was no disconnect that there is at the moment. And I think this is where half the problem is. Seems to be a complete disconnect through the club, supporters, players, board, coaching staff. Ne'er the twain shall meet. So we've always had groups. What we tend to find now, though, is that football supporters trusts tend to grow because they become opposition pressure groups, if you like, to the regime that's in place or whatever. The trust burnt their bridges for me and for a lot of supporters, and of course with the board, over the Super League. Their opposition to the Super League was fine, but when you call on the board of the club, all of the board of the club, the executive board of the football club, to resign en masse, and then say, we will work to elect representatives to that board. Oh, and by the way, Levy and Enoch, we want you to piss off and we'll work with you to find a suitable donor. and then wonder why Levy says, I don't think I want to talk to you anymore. I mean, the analogy I'll paint is this is like telling your wife you don't want her to be married to her anymore. You want her to leave her house, but don't worry, you'll help her with a Tinder profile to find somebody else. And it was, sometimes people come up with an idea like, I don't know, smart motorways, and then so we get rid of the hard shoulder and have 4 lanes of a motorway, and then the idea goes to someone else. And someone else thinks it's a good idea, and then it becomes policy. And I don't know why someone in the trust didn't say, we're not there to get rid of the board. We can oppose the board. We can make representations, but the best way to make those representations is to have channels of communication. Breaking the self-inflicted breaking of communications was just not clever. And I remember, I don't know if this trust is different, but I was trying to research why the original trust, where there was Annalise Jacobs, Bernie Kingsley, I think Danny Wynn, and they had regular. I mean, I saw the minutes. In fact, it was my late father was a member, and I would see the minutes and what have you. And there seemed to be really good dialogue between the club and the trust. Now, I know Ian may know more about I know some of the people that were at the top have now gone, and it might be because of that. But the trust has to work with the board, and the trust, in my view, should be working to be a conduit between the board and the supporters. Otherwise, it doesn't have a purpose for itself or for the fans. Because one of the things about Daniel Levy, and yeah, he's got a lot of weaknesses. He's got a lot of strengths, but he's got a lot of weaknesses. And his main weakness is his poor communication skills. Now, I don't know why that is. If it's because he's genuinely shy, he doesn't appear to be, gets a lot of publicity, or because he doesn't think he should be accountable to the supporters. To some extent, he's right, of course. It's a privately owned business, and he's not accountable the same way, I suppose, as the chairman of Marks and Spencer isn't accountable to the customers. But football clubs supporters aren't customers. We're fans, at best, maybe stakeholders. We will be here long after this board, and our children will be here long after they've gone. So I think that the trust has an important role to play, but I think it needs to take a step back from itself and work out how it best plays a role in the club, and keeping communications open with the main powers that be.
Yeah, I think that. Go on, Lubo.
I don't think that's the problem. I don't think the problem is from the trust end. Let's take every single season ticket holder has a CRN, a client reference number. We're now clients. This is how they look on the fans as clients.
Yeah.
Why isn't it supporters reference number?
Yeah. That's true.
It's a very big point. We discussed this yesterday, didn't we? In it was or fan reference number, or what words to the effects, just non-client. But obviously we had the stuff with the Super League, and the one thing I will mention with this as well, the one thing that really, really annoyed me, and others, is obviously when the Newcastle takeover was coming, and obviously we know we're not getting into the politics of who they are or what they were, or what they are, sorry. But the press, or sorry, the Supporters Trust, Supporters Trust were arranging protests against the sale of Newcastle to this organisation, whilst we were there right next to them, protesting against the ownership of our very own club. Like our house is on fire, or how we see it, and you're worrying about. So that didn't cover them in glory. And then obviously, as Ian said, the Super League. But then we got to fast forward to where we are now. And obviously, this is where we've really got to focus on the trust, in my opinion. Obviously, they've come under new stewardship, new chairman, or whatever phrase you want to do it. And whether you like it or not, when Levy out piped up from Aston Villa onwards, they have been active. They have kept the message going. Listen, we all know when they sent those 4 questions out, I wasn't expecting a response at all. When the club said, yeah, we'll respond, but in February, I was even surprised they gave them the time of day for that. Yeah. I really was.
So was I.
Should they not give the trust the courtesy of reply?
No, but by the same token, like, I don't see how you can be talking to somebody about your transfer strategy while the window is still open. And you're basically saying, okay, tell us how much money we've got. Let every other club know how much budget we've got. Yeah. This and that. So to me, it was either they went before the window and said, what is your plan for the club moving forwards? Or they wait until after. I think the club did well to even respond, because if I was Levy and in the middle of the transfer window, yeah, the supporters trust are like, what the fuck are you doing? I'd be like, the fuck are you talking about?
Jay, the trust weren't asking who Spurs are in for and how much they're prepared to spend.
They asked about the strategy.
Just about strategy.
Yeah,
but
there has been no strategy.
But my thing is that within a transfer
not on the footballing side, should I say?
Yeah.
Fair enough, but I'm saying within a transfer window, the board is entitled to be like, you can't critique what we've done when the window's still open. Let the window close and then critique what we've done. Because otherwise you have to go before the window and say, what are you going to do in this window? Do you see what I mean? Halfway through the window, to me, just is kind of like, that's like throwing your toys out the pram. I don't like what I'm seeing right now, but there's people like Brian and yourself who've not liked what they've been seeing for months. So my thing is that to see it in real time, that I don't agree with. I don't disagree with asking the question. I'm just like, what the fuck do you expect?
Well, let's see what they come back with in February.
True.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see what happens, because like, what we'll do is we'll get the questions up, right? So I'm just gonna share it as well. So give me a second, I'll get it up, right? So this is essentially what the questions they had, right? So the first question, they said, will the club share its medium and long-term strategy for success, both on and off the pitch? How is the club measuring progress, and how does it judge current outcomes against those measurements, right? The second question, the manager employed by the club has not signed a contract, and tell us that we should look and tell us that we should lower our expectations about on-field outcomes. He has said this publicly, and the club needs to spend big money every window just to compete. How does that align with the board's philosophy of achieving success? Right. We'll read the last couple, and then we can discuss it. So the third one, are you satisfied with player recruitment in recent transfer windows and with the performance of the youth teams in development and supply of younger players to the first team? Are there any plans to improve this? The fourth question, does the club have a plan for further investment to ensure that the club remains competitive on the pitch in the face of substantial additional investment by other Premier League clubs? Is the club close to securing a naming rights provider? Is there a plan for further investment from ENIC or potential investors or buyers? So they were the four questions.
Can I just say, like, as I'm looking through these questions, some of these questions are reasonable. Yeah, some of them, as a business owner myself, I would never tell you some of these answers is too much what you're asking.
Yeah,
there's too much information you're asking for.
I so agree with you, Jay, on this. As someone who's owned businesses since 30 odd years, absolutely right. You know, whether the club has plans to partner up with somebody else, whether it's close to a naming rights deal. There is information, particularly in a large corporate entity like Tottenham is now, that are simply so commercially sensitive that you would never discuss them outside of the boardroom. In fact, even at board level, it would often be on a need-to-know basis. So again, and this goes back, I think the trust needs to have a think about what it's there to do and what it's reasonable to ask, because then it comes back, the club wouldn't engage with us. Well, if I was Daniel Levy, I wouldn't be engaging. You know, Jay, if he was Daniel Levy, wouldn't be engaging. No chance at all.
I might even delete this email. I'm not even going to lie.
Yeah.
So Lubo, what's your thoughts?
Go on, Lubo. Yeah, what's your thoughts on this? And then me and Brian can give ours.
I think I agree with parts of what the guys have just said and disagree on others. I think the club have a responsibility to keep in touch and keep connected to the fans. This has been a problem since ENIC took over. The fact that they call us clients says it all. We're fans, we're supporters, Tottenham have got a fantastic loyal fan base. You know, it's a big club. You know, we may not have won the league for 60 odd years. We might not have won the FA Cup for 31 years, 32 years. Hopefully the spell that'll be broken this year. But they just don't. I think they cannot stand the fans. I think there is a real dislike of the fans, and we are. We're an inconvenience to them, you know. But all we are basically, the way they look on us is we're a cash cow. There is no. How can I put it? The experience I had at the AGM about 15 years ago, we hadn't been in the.
Danny, get rid of the questions so we can. We can go back to full screen.
Okay, I'll go
there
back.
You go.
Just to give an idea of the way that Levy looks on fans, I can only give the opinion on how he answered me at an AGM 15 years ago. My season ticket went up from 760 up to 1200. It was one of just under 300. I think the average was around 15%. At the AGM, when it was any other business, I stood up and asked the chairman, how can you justify a 57% increase for a season ticket without even Champions League football coming in? And his answer was, didn't try and talk to me and discuss it with me, didn't even try and schmooze me. His answer was, it is a privilege for you to come and see your team. And the place there was a gasp. Like, people could not believe that a chairman of a public company was answering a question like that. And I just think it was disgusting. It was just disrespectful.
That's such a Levy answer. Ian.
That's why you're laughing, Jay, because you know, like, this is exactly what he was saying.
I have to laugh because it takes a special sort of man to give that answer in an AGM. In fact, Ian, I'm even going to go as far as I'm impressed by that answer, because that takes a certain level of arrogance to be able to deliver that stone face to your face. Listen, motherfucker, you're going to pay or somebody else is. So move on.
Right. It's basically what he was saying. Yeah.
So Ian, just to give some context, can you just let them know? Obviously, there's been times we haven't had Champions League. When you were talking about this, what time period are we talking? Like, are we talking before Redknapp? Are we talking
15 years ago, Brian? Before
no,
Champions
15
League.
years. Sorry, my bad.
15 years ago.
My bad.
Listen
I didn't hear that.
Brian.
It was around the 07-08 time.
Yeah.
There you go. There you go. So yes, so that's what he does. So Danny, we were talking. You were going to give your answer on the on those details.
Yeah, on those questions, right? Look, I understand some of the points that Shaggy and Jay were saying, and look, to an extent, yeah, you can say it from a business point of view, they shouldn't have to answer some of those questions. But the fact of the matter is that this is a football club, and some of the questions that they did throw out, or one or two parts of those questions, because if you actually look at the questions, there's actually multiple questions within the questions, right? So there's actually more than 4 questions. There's like 6 or 7 in there, right?
Well, it's like 12 questions in there.
Yeah, there's a lot of questions. Yeah, if you actually break it down, there's like 2 in each one or whatever it is. So
it's a Levy deal. You need 4 quality ones to find 4 quantity. So,
but for me, look, what I liked about that is the first time in a long time, if not in my time, that I've actually seen a bit of the trust is trying to put a bit of pressure on the board to try and give the fans the communication that we all want, right? It's just to know where we stand as a football club, because at the end of the day, that is what we are. We're not I know we're a business in terms of legality, right? But the fact of the matter is we are a football club. Right? The fans pay money to go and watch football, to be entertained, to go and see the team, try and win games, try and compete for things. That's what we all want. That's what every Tottenham fan pays their season ticket for. That's why I pay my season ticket, because I love my club and I want to watch my team and I want to see if they can try and compete for things, right? And this is where I think the biggest issue has been with the fans and the trust. And I think what they've done is a step in the right direction in trying to put pressure on the board. Now, when you look at it from Levy's point of view, of course, he doesn't have to answer it. But for me, him not answer it is a massive telling to what he thinks of these questions, right? Because if he doesn't answer it in any way, form, or shape, right? I know they said they're going to answer it in February, but it'd be interesting to see what the club come out with when they do officially answer these questions, right? Because for me, if they give your kind of generic type of answers and stuff like that, we're trying to be competitive again and all this and that. That's not really answering the question properly, right? They don't have to answer the question, oh, have we got a naming rights thing lined up yet? Or have we got that is a business deal. We don't have to know about it yet. And the fans, in a sense, shouldn't really care about that, because at the end of the day, the money they're making, they can still, without naming rights or not, they still should have money to invest into the team regardless. So that's really, if unless it's someone from a really strong Levy out person, it's not really something we need to know. What we want to know as fans, and from the questions that I'm reading again, is they want to know what the medium and long term strategy is for success. So where do they want to be as a football club, right? What is their goal to be as a football club? That's what the fans want to know. Are we a team that's just going to try and compete for top 4? If it is, communicate that to the fans, right? Why are they not communicating that to the fans? Is it because they don't want to tell fans that is all they're going to do, because then they might lose season ticket holders, because season ticket holders might think, well, why am I going to go and spend the highest season ticket prices in England, in Europe, to go and watch a team who's just going to compete for top 4? Some fans might still want to do it. Other fans might not want to do it. But for me personally, I probably wouldn't go to watch the games anymore and in the stadium because I don't have. It's a lot of money to go and watch Tottenham just to try and compete for top four. It's not entertaining. You want to see them at least try and compete for an FA Cup. I'd be satisfied with a League Cup. Like I'm just starving of success. That I just want that trophy. I want to see Tottenham lift the trophy for God's sake. And I think that's what people want to see. And the things like where they've questioned about the manager not signing a new contract and about lowering our expectations and about how the club needs to spend. That ties into where Tottenham want to be as a football club. And I think that's the key thing that fans want to know. And that's why I think it's a good step. It'll be interesting to see what they say. Look, the transfer window stuff, it's going to be hard. I get what about the finance stuff and not releasing the financial information. Obviously, everyone will have their opinions and we can discuss that afterwards. But in terms of like, are we satisfied with the player recruitment? I think it's fair to say every fan is probably not satisfied with a portion of the recruitment that we've had over the last sort of 5 to 10 years, right? When we've been in situations where we could have just pushed on a bit more and gone to that next level, tried to compete for the trophies, or even won a trophy if we had the right investment at the right times. And it's just that we haven't had that. And I think that's what fans want to know. They just want to understand what does this club want? Conte has said it himself. What are we? He said, what are we? 4th, 5th, 6th, 7th, or 4th? He's basically saying, to the fans, the club need to decide what they want to be as a club, because then it sets the expectations for the fans, the manager, and there's a lot more. It unites the fans more. In my opinion, it would unite the fans more. But whether that's Daniel Levy's aim or not, that's a different story.
Danny, I mean, I think I've always been an advocate of the view that we probably spent more money than most people imagine. Our problem isn't the spending of the money; it's how badly we've spent it. But when you talk about backing Conte, just looking, there was an article in the Guardian, I think on Monday, and with Porro, I think looking likely. The spending since Conte came is going to top £200 million. So, we are moving in the right direction. But again, I think this comes down again to the communication skills of the board or lack of them, and communicating with fans, communicating with the trust, which is a great way. So I used the word conduit earlier. To say this is what we're trying to achieve. It always breeds suspicion when you don't say anything. So if they don't come out and say, yeah, we are absolutely determined that we are going to compete for cups and compete for the league. I'd love to see Daniel Levy come out and say, I got a real taste for it in Madrid in 2019, and I want to be back playing in the Champions League final, and the stadium was the game changer, and the resources will be put in place to enable us to achieve that. If it's not, then tell us it's not.
Yeah. So,
no, carry on.
I was going to say, because I have an alternate view on Levy, and I know that this is where things start to get spicy. So it's cool. Like, I've got a thick skin, commenters, so don't worry, it's good. So the way I look at it is, I don't think Levy's as bad a guy as you guys do, not at all. I personally am hugely appreciative of what Levy's done for the club. What I think has happened is completely different, and I've never heard someone place this logic on it. So I'm going to give you my logic and take on what's happened at Spurs over the last 5 years, right? So I think that Spurs, first of all, in the 2000s, navigating that path to get to the top four was so much more tortuous than it is now. Yeah, we were below Everton, we were below Villa, we were below teams like that. Yeah, and we managed to get past them, navigate it, make it into the top four, stay there for a bit. So Villa went down. Everton never made Champions League. Do you know what I mean? So to me, I was like, there's a lot to be grateful for. So when people talk about what Levy, when Spurs haven't won a trophy for 20 odd years, I'm like, okay, of how many of those years did you expect us to win a trophy? How many of those years do you think that we should have been a trophy winning side? Right? I'd argue there's X number of years that we got to that point, right? I think after the Champions League final, Levy realized maybe he fucked up not buying a player for X amount of time. Yeah? So then he tried to buy players afterwards, right? So there was a clear indication to me that he was trying to fix the problem, right? Now, we bought Lo Celso, we bought Ndombele, we bought Sessegnon. It didn't work, right? But the intention was there to invest in the squad, right? Then after that, we got the stadium and COVID happens, right? Okay, you build a brand new stadium and then you don't get the benefits of it for X period of time. If you're a self-sufficient club, why would that not harm us? It should harm us because we don't put external money into the club. Then Levy does the restructuring. So now, to everybody, the stadium shouldn't have been an issue, right? So if the stadium is an issue and we have financial pressure, say that. Do you know what I mean? But I think because, like somebody just said, the stadium's meant to be a game changer. We've built up that this game changer stadium is going to happen. We build it, and then our finances are still shit. I think there's an element of hubris from Levy then at that point. He doesn't want to admit that this thing that we spent the last few years building isn't going to immediately benefit the club. So I don't see him as being as willfully negligent as some of other people. I think that he's made mistakes. But I think for me, the biggest issue with the fan base, and I'm going to be honest here, is that it's like confirmation bias, a learned helplessness. It's like everything that's been good that happened to the club was nothing to do with Levy. And everything that's bad is all Levy's fault. That's impossible. That can't compute. You cannot blame Levy for everything that's gone wrong and not give him any praise for anything that's gone well. Who built that squad that got to the Champions League final? Who brought Mitchell in to buy those players? Who brought Paratici? Who got Conte? Like, he has done stuff that should be appreciated, but because he's made a number of mistakes, the fan base, they don't like to hear it. Like, and the thing is saying that keeps repeating the same mistakes. I agree with that. We need a strategy, and what the Supporters Trust said is true. My personal logic is the game in the Premier League has changed. It takes a lot more money, a lot more direction, a lot more strategy to be successful. ENIC need to show that they're capable of taking us to the next level, or step aside so somebody else should. That's simple to me. It's very simple. Either ENIC, you can get us to the next level where we're winning trophies, or you can't, and you should step aside, whilst we are appreciative of what you've done, and let somebody else take over. It's that simple. Do I think ENIC are capable of creating the strategy and implementing it? I do. I'm not completely of the opinion that it's impossible to do that. 2 centre-backs, a goalkeeper. The squad looks pretty strong if Porro comes in. I don't blame ENIC for not winning trophies. Who told Pochettino to say trophies build arrogance? Who told that motherfucker to say that? When we were starving, when we were dying of thirst for a trophy, who told him not to drink toilet water? Who told him not to drink tap water? Why did he just want to drink champagne? That's not on Levy. Us bottling finals, us playing some like wing back.
I tell you what, Jay.
Whoa. Before we go any further,
Go on.
first of all, I didn't even get to give my say on the trust. Then we skipped the topic. Then we haven't been able to do the comments from before this topic. And I just want to publicly apologise to Tony Rodriguez because I blocked him in mistake of star in a comment. I have unblocked you. I've asked him to send.
And he had a super chat as well, Brian.
Yeah, I've asked. Have you started the super chat?
I can't find it. You blocked the.
Oh yeah, no. I've asked him to send it to me, and then I read it out.
All right.
So we're going to do my bit about the trust. We're going to go through the questions that I started.
And we'll go back to that, Jay, after.
Then we go back to
Ian, we'll go to Shaggy after. And then,
so all I'm going to say with the trust is, listen, I'll be very, very quick because we've kind of gone off that subject. What I will say with those questions, I agree with Jay and Shaggy when it says some of these questions shouldn't have been answered. But do you know why these questions get asked? because we've had years and years and years and years and years of silence. And if you just answered these questions at the beginning, when they were just little ripples, not become huge tidal waves, these questions wouldn't have been as what's going on. Kind of like with our right wing back situation now. After Carl Walker, it's been Aurier, Trippier, and all the other Doherty, and now Spence. And now, if you just dealt with it in the first place and just addressed the issues and not had this wall of silence, it wouldn't be getting as severe as it is, because of years and years of silence and years, as like Shaggy said, the lack of communication is shocking from a club. Like Jay, you said you wouldn't answer these as a business, but I'm sure when you look at your business, you don't address your customers, your clients, whatever you want to call them, where you just go, listen, fuck you, I'm not going to talk to you for 4 or 5 years.
I've never spoken to them like Levy speaks to Ian.
Exactly.
I'll be honest.
That's the thing, because you'd address the situation, because it's about keeping loyal customers, keeping your business afloat, and doing what you have to do to make your customers happy, or the supporters, whatever. And because it's been such disdain and such lack of empathy and no communication, it's going to rile some feathers. It's going to rile some feathers. And if they hadn't have got to this stage, and I will say this all happened obviously with the Villa game. It all started. Then we piped up, and when I say we piped up, there's some people that I stand proudly with all the time. I'm going to mention a couple of them because I know they're known in the community. I don't want to give people's names away. Yeah. So first of all, you got Graham in the chat, who is one of the 3 people that stood by me. And when I say stood by me, started the January transfer window last year from 6 a.m. in the morning every single day. And then you've got Queen of the Survey, Rachel Freeman, as in Queen of the Space, Queen of the Survey, Queen of Twitter, everywhere. Her petition, I think, has reached so many people they don't even know what Tottenham Hotspur is. She's posted it so many times. But it's because what we've been doing has been gaining attention, where the second questions they set out, which were more direct, going, right, we want answers, we want them now. Yeah, it weren't, like you said, in the business, Jay, the business part of it, I get not speaking. To be frank, I don't give a who gets the naming rights. I don't give it to what.
I don't either.
I care what happens when they walk onto that pitch, and how the manager, whoever it may be, if they're backed with quality, not quantity, and so on and so on. So, right, let's go through these questions, so then we can get back to where we were. And Tony has sent me a message. So I hope he's back in here, so I can. So, right, first of all, so when are they going to come out with the 4 answers? You asked that we asked the answer. Well, they said February, but they also said it was going to be Paratici that's going to be doing a statement. Let's just say we don't know about that. We've had Gareth. These clubs are so rude. They just ignore the trust these days. In Lubo, you'd agree with that, wouldn't you? At the moment, apart from we'll come back in February.
Honestly, don't know where the trusts are up to on a day-to-day basis with the club. I know they're meant to see them every quarter. I don't think it's every quarter. It might be every 6 months. Let's see what the club come back with in February with these answers.
There we go. So right, I'm going to read out because I've got it here now, and I hope Tony, let me know. Send me a chat on Facebook and let me know that you are back in the chat. His actual super chat was, and thank you for the super chat, was the 51% rule should also be introduced into the Premier League. Then we would have then we wouldn't have this discussion. Obviously, it's for me. I don't know how the other people feel on the panel. As much as I agree with that, I think it's next to impossible to implement right now, isn't it?
It's never going to be implemented. But if I don't know, I'm not a politician or anything, so I don't know how it would work in terms of legally if they could do that. But because they're privately owned companies, if they could do that, then that would be the best way to, in my opinion, to run a football club, like how they run it in Germany. How they run it in Germany.
You say that now, Danny. Wait until top Spurs veto transfers because they've not heard of the player online. You know, it's like no. We're going to use our 51% to veto this transfer. We're not putting this one through. It'll be interesting to see, but it's like I don't understand how we would then want a fan-owned club to compete with Abu Dhabi. What are we doing here?
No, but this is what I was saying. They were saying that if they put a rule in, it would have to be across the Premier League.
Oh,
so
God, mate,
it wouldn't be just for one club. But I mean, like, it would be interesting, and I think it'd be the fairest way for clubs to try and be as competitive as possible with each other if it was run like that. I mean, obviously, it's run like that in Germany, but obviously Bayern Munich, for example, they're a super club, right? They've always been a super club, so they're different, and the other teams try to fight with them, but they make more money than anyone else. So it's it'd be similar in the Premier League, but now it'd be very difficult to do that, if not impossible to do it, because of like states owning clubs now and all this kind of shit. And unfortunately, the way the Premier League has gone, all the Premier League care about is making more and more money. So they want, if the Premier League really cared about morality and human rights and all this kind of shit, none of these owners, it would be a 51% type of ownership, right? But all they care about is trying to make as much money as they can, and that's why all these clubs are getting sold to the states and all these super billionaires, and it's become ridiculous in the Premier League. The only way you can really compete now is if you have money, unless you're just extremely lucky.
Ian, can I ask you a question? Since that
Which
moment,
so Lubo's above you. Lubo's above you. Shaggy.
I'll go Lubo in it.
You go for one on the top.
Ian, Ian squared. Like communal question. So in terms of like, obviously, I know that you clearly aren't a fan of Levy. Like that's clear. That's clear. In terms of where you stand, in terms of the trust versus Levy versus this. Are you happy with the trust's, what the trust's efforts and movements are, because you think Levy's a slippery guy? Do you think they overreached with some of the questions, but you understand why? Where's your head at in terms of all of this?
Where's my head at? The club aren't gonna answer all those questions. Number one, you can't blame the trust for asking the questions. If they don't ask those questions, then people will say, "Well, why aren't you asking them?" Fair. So, you can't be right. They can't be right all the time. They're going to be wrong, if they don't ask the question. I think they do the best they possibly can.
I agree. I think you opened well with the point in terms of like, I mean, you're an authority that has no authority speaking to the actual authority. So
that's a good tongue twister there, Jay.
I know, that's not my first rodeo. So
it can't be easy for the trust.
Right, let me get through these. I've got to read 8 more comments, then we're back to discussion. So Dave Raybold, who I had a good conversation with privately yesterday, top man. We have to remember the supporters trust are volunteers as well. Like the speaker is saying, it's a thankless task. That was a while ago. We got Wolves Fee, who is just dropped in a super chat as always. Thank you, Wolves Fee, with no comment. If you did want to say anything, send it to me. Active on again. We have to realise that this is the footballing. That in a footballing equivalent, we and the trust are having to deal with a truly distasteful dictatorship. Before I go on a rant, the diamond's in the house. Sue Smith is in the house. Where do we go from here, which was the name of the title? Quite simply, nowhere under this ownership. That's why I love Sue Smith, the diamond. Our very own Ben Kaufman and Brian Ireland, who is part of the channel, are in the building. And Brian Ireland is saying, if Levy was accountable to himself, would he have sacked himself for his own poor performance? You know what, Brian? That's a whole different stream that could be about 3 weeks long. But it's a good point. Oh, there's the other one, Kaufman. When the club asked me for the season ticket money next year, I might offer less than half the money like they did with Trossard. That's not bad. Or ask to loan it with an option to buy at the end of the season. Paddy Hartner, who's a wonderful friend of the channel, in my opinion, there's a difference between wanting Levy and ENIC out. Remember, Levy can leave and we could have an ambitious new chairman like Lewis's daughter Vivian, and apparently she is huge and wants to give Spurs a proper go. And then another member of Tottenham on Tour, Mayachi from Israel, Amir, big up everyone, great show, brilliant panelists. So there we go. So now we can go back, but do me a favour, because we've got 121 people in right now. If you do have any questions or comments that you want brought up, either you don't have to send a super chat, but that will get it sent to the top immediately and we'll deal with. and also just put at TOT so me and Danny can see them clearly to star them.
And also just make sure, if you haven't done, please smash that like, because it
And
really does
subscribe.
help us as well. And that subscribe button is free, doesn't cost you anything, and it really helps us to give you more shows like this.
Exactly. So where were we? Who was speaking on the Shaggy? Where was Shaggy? Oh, was it you, Jay?
Shaggy,
Sorry.
I just wrapped up, and I think I was passing over to Shaggy. But in summary, I was basically saying I think that like you don't get lucky as many times as Levy has over the last 20 years if it's just luck. He's done a lot of good for the football club, and I think that people when somebody says he's a parasite, what the fuck? Like, based on what? Like he made this club from where it was to a billion-pound company. You say that he shouldn't get the benefits of that. In what way is he a parasite? When is he siphoning? Okay, so they might build some houses. They might build some hotels. You know, they might do. Okay, this guy's a multi-millionaire. Like, I don't see it the same way as other people do. I can't see what they're saying in terms of this guy clearly loves this club. Whether people think that he loves it as much as them, that's the difference. That's the reason why we didn't go bankrupt in the 2000s. I promise you, if some of these fans were running Tottenham Hotspur in the 2000s, we would have gone bankrupt. We would have done a Leeds, because every single time when Levy's doing certain things, I'm going to say this. Okay, say you buy Tevez. Say you buy these players when you want to buy these players, and you need to hit a certain target in order to justify it. What happens if you don't hit that target? Yeah, and you have to then sell players, and you have to do this and do that. Self-sustaining growth used to be sexy. It used to be sexy, and then you brought all this Arab money in, and I don't mean that like rudely.
Of course, we know what you're talking about, don't we?
Yeah. So it's like you bring all this money in, and it's like now all of a sudden sustainable growth isn't sexy. FSG out. They brought you a Champions League and a Premier League. They want FSG out.
I'm going to answer that.
Go on, Ian.
Just so that people think I'm balanced.
Yeah.
From where Enid were when they bought the club in 2001 for 22 million, they have built an infrastructure for the club that will make them a fortune of money.
Yeah.
Make them. We've had one trophy in 22 years. I'm not saying they don't deserve it. As far as, you know, they've gone and they've built it and they've made the club into a very, very saleable company. Hopefully someone with a lot of money who loves the club. And let's get one thing straight, Jay. Levy loves having the platform to make a profit. There's a big difference between that and loving a club. Abramovich came over. He loved the club. He wanted success at Chelsea. And I remember when Chelsea won the Champions League in that penalty shootout in 2012, was it? The cameras a few seconds after the final whistle focused on him. I mean, the guy was on cloud nine. He could not have been happier. You know, it was 8-9 years of putting money in, helping to build the club. And look at Chelsea. They have won 19 trophies since Levy and Lewis took over with Enoch.
Most successful English club in that last 20 years.
They do not love the club.
I don't know about that.
They love the platform.
Yeah. I just want to add on to
make money.
I've just got to add on to this.
That's not an issue.
I like it. It's a slight angle, but
Jay,
it's
Jay, that's not an issue if they're in the game. They're not in the game.
Yeah.
They want to charge the fans the highest prices. I've read plenty of places in Europe, probably worldwide.
Yeah, it is.
So Jay, I just want to add one thing onto this, because I'm happy you said the word Leeds. I'm really happy. Of all the teams you could have picked,
okay, go on.
You picked Leeds. And the reason I'm going to say this, we do know that saying, and I did the research for this myself, and we did it on Savage Show. When people say Leeds did a Leeds, do you know Leeds did a Leeds, went down to the third tier of football, spent 16 years in the Championship, and since they've been in the Championship, their chairman has invested more money than Daniel Levy has in the last 8 years.
Okay, but
So when people say, I know where you're coming from,
yeah.
and I know what you're saying, but when people say Leeds did a Leeds, and do we want to be the next Leeds? Well, Leeds, like I said, went down, had I don't know how many years in League One, but spent 16 years in the Championship, in the playoff, trying to get out. Have come into the Premiership, have been there since the lockdown with COVID was like that, and they've actually invested more money, as in the owners. Not saying they spent more, they've invested of their own cash more than Levy has in 8 years. So when people say Leeds do a Leeds, it's about. I can see where the example is. Everyone uses it.
It's a good rebuttal. I'm going to flip that a little bit and say, but strategy over spending. It's strategy over spending in 2023, I'm afraid. So nobody is ever, I don't care. Like when somebody talks about spending, stop it. Because it's not about spending. It's about strategy and then spending on the strategy. Now, you can say they don't have a strategy, but £200 million spent since Conte comes in means they're spending enough money.
Can I just say one thing, Jay, right? Well, First of all, there's this thing that people keep saying about we spent £200 million, right?
Okay.
People need to understand what the actual fact is, right? The fact is that, so people will tie in that Romero deal, right?
Okay.
Right. Before Conte was here, under Nuno, Romero was brought in on the obligation to buy, that it was always in their plan that he was part of that deal. He wasn't brought in for Conte. He was brought in for the previous manager. So that's why there's this fallacy that people keep saying that
technically, did we buy him?
Right. But we bought him when Conte was here, right? But we bought him with the vision that before he was here, he wasn't even in the plan when Romero was bought, right? He was bought on the purpose that it was an obligation to buy because that was the only way we could financially wrangle it, right? Because Tottenham didn't want to outlay the money for Romero in that summer. So they said, okay, let's do a loan to buy, right? And that buy option is not something they're going to pay all out in one go. So look, we could always have an argument that there's always this figure that we spend 200 million, but in the actual reality, we haven't spent 200 million, because if we want to be really fair and honest about it, half of that money is probably not even paid until years down the line, right? So first of all, the outlay of what the club are putting out is nowhere near that actual figure, right? So, and if you want to add Romero into it, we can take out, or we can take out Spence from that, right? Because for example, Spence, I'm just gonna mute you for a second, Ian, right? And then I'll bring you back in.
Thanks.
But like with Spence, he's another example, right? You want to add 12-15 million pound for Spence. That's someone that Conte didn't want. I can tell you for a fact, the only player Conte wanted was Perisic. He was the only one on the list that he wanted. So the Richarlison, for example, right? He was, the club had been following him for years. They had been following him since the Watford days. The club have always had an interest in Richarlison. He was put forward to Conte, right, as an option. Conte said, okay, because I can tell you that there was two players on the list that Conte asked for, and as striker options, and the club didn't want to do it. The opportunity presented itself, and Conte said, okay, yeah, we can do that, right? There's a lot more deeper things into the way they bring in players, right? And if it was up to Conte, I'm telling you now, some of the fans might not be happy with the players that he wanted, right? But at least it was his players. That's the difference. So that's the problem.
So you make great points. I'm going to rebuttal this with look at our outgoings over the last 2 years, right? And this is another thing that it's not just because of Levy and Enoch Spurs are in X position. It's because of other reasons like selling players and buying players. People want to know why Enoch don't pull the trigger excessively on other players, because you end up with a squad of players that are not fit for purpose after a while and you can't sell. Look at the players that are out on loan at the moment. Our record transfer fee players, People want us to continue to accumulate squads of players, How are you going to buy all these players when Conte is not committed? What do people want? Because we have players out on loan that we cannot sell. We have Reggie on loan, Lo Celso on loan, and Ndombele on loan, Winks on loan. We cannot get reasonable money for these players. We have bought a number of these players.
How do you know? Sorry, are you involved in the transfers? Are you involved in the discussions with these
what do you mean,
the loan clubs?
What do you mean?
How do you know? You're talking.
No, Luba, what do you mean? How do I know? Oh, did Lo Celso not have a clause in his contract at Villarreal
How
that
do
they
you
did
know?
not take? Lo
Hang on.
Celso had a clause that they did not take up. Clubs do
Did
not.
you draft the contract?
My God, what are we
Did
doing
you?
here?
Sorry, Jay. You're talking like from experience, like you're a lawyer. You're a sports lawyer.
I did
Who's drafted
study
these
law.
contracts?
Hold on. Are you rebuttaling the fact that we were unable to sell these players? Are you telling me that was untrue? Are you telling me
They're
that?
still alone. They're
So
still alone.
you're telling me the squad Conte doesn't want these players, and Conte sent them out on loan rather than selling them? Is that what you're trying to tell me?
Yeah, but
let's see if the clubs they've gone on loan to buy them at the end of the season, and let's comment. Let's have an opinion there.
Okay, that's fine. But the thing is we were unable to sell these players last summer. That is a statement of fact.
Yeah, but but you're saying that as a fact, right? Okay, let's ask
Is
you
it not
this
a fact?
question.
Are you guys disputing that?
But let me ask you this, right? Why did they not sell them? What's the reason they didn't sell them?
Because the players underperformed versus their market level.
No. But you're first of all, you're saying their market level. But then you have to if you're going to say that, then you have to take into.
Well, what
fact,
do you mean? We spent 50 million.
Hold on, Jay. You have to take into account who makes the decision on what the players are worth.
Don't do that. We spent 50 million on a player. You want to sell him for 20? What are we doing here? That's not
Arsenal. Arsenal spent 72 million. Go on, Lubo.
Jay, who's top of the table?
Arsenal.
Thank you. And when Arteta came in, there was a lot of deadwood. There were a lot of senior players there he didn't want. And Arsenal took a massive loss on getting rid of those players. Aubameyang went on a free.
Okay.
Ozil
went on a free.
Yeah.
They lost a lot of money on those players.
Ozil.
Hang on, Jay.
The
outlay on transfer fees, the outlay on wages, they took an absolute bath. But Arsenal took a view, we're going to back Arteta, we're going to get rid of these clubs. And if we lose money, we lose money. And look where they are now.
Right.
They're going from strength to strength. Sometimes you have to lose.
You have
to lose the battle, Jay, to win the war.
Right, and I'm going to disagree with that.
And Levy has to win every... Stop it. Let me finish. Levy has to win every single battle when it comes to buying and selling players.
That's untrue.
The problem is that we're left with a lot of players. I'll give you one example. United wanted Dyer, put an offer in. It was a good offer. Levy said no.
Yep.
Okay. So
manager didn't want him at the time. Wanted to sell him. Levy said no. So you couldn't. That was a £40 million offer.
Okay.
Was reported.
Okay.
So the manager's left with a player who he doesn't want.
Yeah.
Instead of having 40 million to invest in somebody that he does want.
Okay.
That's just one small example.
Okay. So
look at where Arsenal are now. So you can't turn around and say the Celso was 27 million. If we don't get 27 million, we're going to sell.
I'm not saying that.
Is that what you're saying?
I'm not saying.
In a minute, we're going to let him speak because he hasn't spoken for ages.
Hold on, you guys jump in a second. But I'm saying I'm not saying that. I'm seeing the comments and stuff like that. No, we let Aurier go on a free. We let Sissoko go on a free. Levy's mentality, in my opinion, has clearly changed. I see this guy willing to let players go for much less than he used to. And I'm saying the clubs, even still after that, were not offering reasonable amounts of money for our players. We had Lo Celso, who's a starter for Argentina, who played Champions League semi-final. You see his fucking age mate, McAllister, being touted for 50 million, and they want to offer us 12. Why would we sell him? Like, I don't understand why somebody then is having a go at Levy for saying he doesn't want to sell a player that has clearly a higher market value. Okay, you want to cut your losses.
Who's having a go at Levy? No one's having a go at him for turning down a £12 million offer. No one said that he's wrong.
So I'm saying we couldn't sell our players. Yeah, players that we
at the moment, but every player has a price.
Of course.
You can do the deal if the price is right.
Of course.
Now you get messers who will take the mickey, like Levy did when offering Brighton 12 million for Trossard. That was a joke offer. That was an absolute joke offer.
Right, that's fine. I'm not disputing that.
Arsenal went in and including add-ons, they're paying 27 million. Now they've got a very good striker.
Is Trossard better than Danjuma?
I don't know. I haven't seen Danjuma. Exactly. I can't answer that.
Exactly.
I can't answer that.
So for me personally, all I'm saying is here, like I see that people are negative on this. I'm saying we struggle to sell the players that we did not want at this FC. Yeah, the club chose not to accept substandard bids, in their opinion, for these players on the expectation that they go out on loan and perform better. Now, if the club are going to continue to overpay for players whilst being underpaid for the players that they're trying to sell, that is a business model that will descend into disaster. Can everyone agree with that?
Yeah,
If it was on every single player, then yes.
But what I'm saying is the players we've got here, as in Ndombele, Lo Celso, Reguilon, yeah, all of those players should be able to fetch you at least £20 million, in my opinion. This summer, if they don't, cut your losses, sure. But last summer, of course, I'd expect at least £20 million for any of those players. And if they don't get that, what do you want me to do? Go out and start paying premium prices for players whilst we let our players go for peanuts? I'm not blaming.
Okay, one second. Ian's been very, very quiet.
Prices for players.
Let's Shaggy talk. 1 second, Ian. We'll go back to you. Shaggy hasn't spoken for about 3 hours. I'm worried about his well-being.
I'm on mute. I think I've lost the will to live here.
What's your views, Ian?
Well, somewhere between the two. I think this goes down to the abject lack of due diligence in our recruitment process. I'm going to give you an example of that. Was the signing of Ndombele. That was our record signing. I think, I don't know, figures between 56 million and 63 million pounds. Huge amounts of money for us anyway. And I remember seeing, just after we'd signed him, Emmanuel Petit saying something along the lines of, it's a strange signing. He's not exactly, that popular in France, or words to that effect. Now, there was Levy, the great negotiator, appeared to have his pants pulled down by Lyon over that transfer, and then finds, he can't play. He's nowhere near the standard, and I don't know what we're gonna get. And it's one of those. Lo Celso, I don't know why Lo Celso isn't a successful player at Tottenham. I don't know if it's the system. I don't know why we signed so many players who just don't seem to cut it. You look at all of our top signings, and very, very few of them have actually succeeded. Even if you look at 25 million for Sessegnon, you have to say Sessegnon, the boy who's out at Udinese, I can't remember how you pronounce his name. Yeah, it looks like he's going to be, the number 1/2 choice next season with Perisic. Who I suspect has got at least another year left in him. And Sess is another one. Great, talented young English player who may well have to be moved on. Part of the problem, again, we talk about Levy. It always comes down to Levy. Jay said someone, it's obviously a while since I've spoken. Levy is quite a brilliant businessman, but his background is in land economics. Daniel Levy could tell you to the penny the value of every square inch of that stadium and the surrounding land and what have you. And I suspect when he builds goal line bars, with all these food outlets, he's done the microeconomics to work out exactly how much he can take. The fact that it's a fantastic atmosphere pre and post game, and turns into football a real match day experience rather than going to the game for an hour and a half and then squeeze it onto the train back after the game, is indicative of what he's managed to achieve. But he seems to me to be the worst kind of micromanager. In other words, he needs to get involved in every piece of decision making everywhere in the club. And I was hoping that the recruitment of a sporting director or football director in Paratici would mean that he was going to back out of transfers. And yet here we see time and time again, the 12 million offer for Trossard, the Porro deal that just seems to be taking an interminable amount of time to actually get it. All have the hallmarks of Levy's micromanagement. I remember Simon Jordan saying on TalkSport, that the problem was that was bordering on anti-Semitic, this, but he said the problem with Levy, he always wants everything 50% off and then 10% discount on that. And I can understand how other chairmen would be, really, oh God, it's Daniel, what, But then we go and spend, excuse me, £60 million on Richarlison. So some of it just really doesn't make sense at all. But Danny, I think it was a point you made about the money that we've spent. Football contracts are calculated in funny ways and what have you. And I mean, I saw Chelsea have spent 184 million so far this transfer window, which is actually 38% of all Premier League spending. But if you were more amortize that over the length of some of these contracts, they probably spent 25 million this transfer window. So I think when you go saying, well, we haven't really spent 200 million, I think all you can do is calculate the final transfer fees for those players to compare like with like. As I say, my issue is that we spend so badly. Excuse me, the cough's going to come back again.
Don't worry, Ian.
So I'm just gonna take a quick comfort break here, but I'll let you carry on, and we'll get seconds out for round 2 between Joe and Lubo.
I think we've kind of got away from the subject as well, because it was kind of like, where do we think the club is heading? And automatically, when we do these things, we just jump straight into the Daniel Levy in, Daniel Levy out. Let's have a scrap. Let's talk this. Let's talk that. Let's get back to...
Do you know what? It kind of all ties into it anyway, right? Because what we'll do is we'll have a final say on it, and then we'll go into kind of a bit more in depth of these topics, and then what we can kind of say about it.
I've got some questions.
Yeah, just to go on what Ian was saying as well about the strategy about bringing in players like Ndombele and stuff like that. The way I see it as well is that, look, every football club, a player is an asset now. Unfortunately, the way it is looked at now, they are assets, right? Because they cost a lot of money, and if they don't perform, it's harder to shift the players. Like it's been with a lot of the players that we've signed over the last couple of years, right, or 5 years. And what my biggest problem with all of this is, again, it all comes back down to where the club is heading, the planning, right? Why would they bring in someone like Ndombele for then 3 months for a manager who actually wanted him, and then sack him 3 months later because he's not doing the job? He's not giving him the time to do what Poch wanted to do, which was a painful rebuild, right? He brought in the player like Ndombele for Pochettino because Pochettino wanted that player. He was the one player that he wanted from that window. I know everyone knows the Bruno Fernandes saga, right? Last minute, we pull out because we changed terms, and then they didn't want to do the deal. We end up signing Lo Celso instead, right? He was the second on the list, but the player they wanted was Bruno Fernandes, right? And for whatever reason, the club or Levy or whatever just didn't agree with the change. We wanted to change the terms, right? So we didn't get our top option. But again, it all comes back down to planning. If you buy a player for a manager, then you have to stick with a plan and a vision to say, right, we're going to give Pochettino another 2 years to implement what he wants to do with the restrictions within the club, to at least try and get the players that he wanted up to a standard and get rid of the players that he wanted to get rid of. But what did they do? They sack him. And Ndombele had 4 different managers. How's a player ever going to get any kind of... Look, we all know, for example, I'm using him as an example, but in his example, right, we all know he's got, like it looks like he's got mentality issues, and he struggles with a bit of laziness on the pitch and stuff like that. He doesn't train as hard as other people, but we all know he's got natural ability, right? He's a very gifted player, but he can't do it for a whole 90 minutes. The same has happened at Napoli this season, right? He shows glimpses of how good he can be, but again, it's the planning of what a manager wants, and that's the problem. You don't go and spend £63 million on a record signing to then sack the manager that wanted him in the first place, like 3 months later. That for me is the definition of failure in the ownership, because they're not planning for anything. There's no plan. There's no structure to bringing in players, right? That's why we've had so many managers over the last 5 years. We've had 5 managers if you include Ryan Mason. I know he's not. If we don't include him, it's a lot of managers in 5 years, right? So that's always been my issue. Brian, I want to come to you like kind of what your thoughts on where do you think we're going as a club? What do you think's happening with this club?
Look, every time, all I will say is every time, and I'm gonna go. Obviously, I people know it's very well. I turned to where I am right now when Yol got sacked. From that moment, I was done. You got to. We'll skip forwards. Couple of managers when we got. Oh, no, AVB came in, so we got AVB. We went with that style of play. Then we got rid of him, and we had that style of play. Before that, sorry, we had Harry Redknapp, didn't we? So we played an attacking brand of football, and we had those type of players. Then we had AVB, who played this brand of football. So we had Excel. We had too many players that didn't play in the right positions. Do we mould them? Do we sell them? Then we go to another manager that plays a different style of football. Then another manager that plays a different style of football. Then another manager that plays a different. You even look. With Nuno to Conte, we had Emerson Royale, who's going to be a right back in a back four, and then we go employ a manager that plays a back three.
Yeah.
We have four midfielders that when they only fed into two and they weren't good enough. And every time people talk about the money, like Jay did, and Jay talks. Listen, there is no doubt, like people said, we have spent the money, but every single time we go for the cheap alternative rather than the one the manager wants. And Ndombele was a listen, like we said, nobody wanted him. He was wanted by a lot of people, but the only one that went and put hard-earned money in was us, and we had our fingers burnt. Royale, Barcelona were laughing at us. We wanted Tomiyasu, but we couldn't sign him because he was at the Olympics. But we could sign Brian Hill, who, funnily enough, was at the Olympics. There's just things that if we had just signed them, not saying we have to listen. I'm not one of those that think we have to get every single player the manager wants. I don't think we have to spend 80, 90, 100 plus million on every single player. I just want the managers to have authority to say, this is what I want. This is, especially when you look at the wing backs, which are so vital to Conte. If he had just said, listen, I don't care what you do, we'll go for the chip. I need this. For this whole thing to work, I need this. And we know the right wing back's been a problem since Pochettino time. And here we are, on the fifth manager since then? So where we're heading is every time I think we take one step forward, it looks like we're taking one step forward, but we end up taking three back. You look, Danny, you'll know full well that when this 150 million came in, my Twitter and your Twitter went absolutely ballistic. Ha ha, ha ha, you're stupid. Look at that. Money's coming. We're doing this, we're doing that. We're going to. Well, I look back at it now and you look at 130 million of it spent, half of it on Richarlison. The team was squad filler. I would say, listen, Basuma, you would have thought he's coming in for first team. You would have thought that. I would have thought that. I thought.
Definitely. I was so happy you signed him.
I was delighted. I thought, here we go. That. And we started this window off thinking, do you know what? And I came live on all the YouTube channels and said, let's wait and see what happens. 150 million spent would have been like, and I'm just going to use examples here, not a Skriniar at a centre back. Like I would have rather that went on 2 or 3 players of high quality and have said, do you know what? I would have come out straight away. If we got a Skriniar, let's just say, I'm just saying a Maddison and a Richarlison, that probably was over the 150. I would stand forward before you today and go, do you know what? Well done. That's a fucking window. Yeah. That's something to get excited about. And then obviously we've seen that it's not worked out, whether that's Conte, whether that's Levy, whether that's whatever. But then we keep seeing all the concerts, the boxing, and we'll see. Listen, where is this club heading? If the results come out on the financials, which we all think they're going to come out that way, I think it's heading for full-blown Armageddon. In all honesty, I think there's going to be uproar. I think there's going to be huge issues. Look at it with our manager, with our striker. These are key fundamentals that need to be sorted. You don't see this at any other club. Happens so often. Yes, clubs have turmoil. Yes, clubs have. Look what Arsenal went through with Wenger, trying to get him out and the players leaving when they left the stadium. But look what they're doing now. We just keep repeating the same mistake over and over and over again. We were told that Paratici is going to be in charge of all the footballing matters. This is going to happen. Was he? Do I know? I don't know. Is he going to be able to do it going forward? I highly doubt it. I always thought we should have got Louis Campos in. It fits the Spurs model. Buy young, find beautiful, incredible talent, turn them into superstars. Off they go for the hundreds of millions that he does. That's kind of the model that fits what Levy wants. But it's not. I keep saying, and I always have this reference with him. You know when the movie with Julia Roberts, Pretty Woman, and Richard Gere has to live in the penthouse, but he's scared of heights, and he goes, "Why? Because it's the best." When they have the best scenes, he has to think what is the best for him and the highest prestige and the highest caliber. When it's not. You don't see Harry Redknapp or Mauricio Pochettino storming into his business meetings and saying, "Well, I guess we can get our merchandise revenue up by 16%." And look at this PowerPoint I've just. No, it's not his job. It's not his job. So why he doesn't listen to the footballing aspect? I can't remember who. I think it was Stell. When Stell said, if you look at it, we've had 14 managers and 6 directors of football under his tenure. That's not including caretaker managers. Like it or not, they are footballing experts. Even Tim Sherwood, even Juande Ramos, even Baldini, they are experts in what they do and should have been given authority to do or run it how they wanted to, within reason. But the footballing side should have been, boom, there you go, this is yours, I'm staying the fuck away. And obviously we know time after time it doesn't happen. So where I think we're heading, if listen, there's still no here we go on Porro as we go into day 26. Who knows what happens? I think if the financials come out the way they do and Kane and Conte go, there is going to be Armageddon. There is going to be Armageddon, and I will gladly say I will be part of it.
Lubo, what do you think on that? And in your opinion, where do you think this direction is going under the current ownership? Do you think? Yeah, I kind of want to get your thoughts on it, and then we'll go to Shaggy, and then we'll go to Jay after.
Okay. The owners will only go so far. They get to 4th, 5th, 6th, they're making profits. They're happy. They never stretch. They never go the extra yards. They don't want to compete. They're not scared to compete. They don't want to compete. And that's the problem. They're not in the game. Keep using that line. They're not in the game. And I think it's disgraceful that they abuse the brand loyalty from this great fan base, this loyal fan base, and smash prices up. I think it's just appalling. Put the product on the pitch. If you're going to charge people the highest prices, put the product on the pitch. You know, you go into a Michelin 3-star, 4-star restaurant. You expect top food. Yep. You don't expect average food. They give us, to a large degree, average product. This isn't, Jay's just been talking about the last few years. We've been watching this for 21, 22 years. I remember soon after Enoch took over, I think it was David Buckler, who was on the board at the time, and George Graham got sacked and Glenn Hoddle came in and he was on telly, Buckler, saying, "We've got our Tottenham back." Well, we haven't got our Tottenham back. We lost our Tottenham the day that Enoch bought the club, because we then became an investment business and not a football club. And that's the biggest problem. Bigger than recruitment. And Levy's all over everything. He's probably the only boss. You look at the owners, Mansour, City, Glazers, Fenway, John Henry. They've got people in the club. They've got managing directors in the club looking after the club for them. We don't. We've got an owner who's actually in there. That's the difference. And he's all over everything. And unfortunately, because they're not prepared to take that risk, Dan Juma, I think I was told this is a £2.5 million outlay.
Correct. It is.
It was done in 24 hours.
Yep, correct.
Dele Alli, 5 million. They moved like lightning. Anything that is a deal, Dele Alli didn't come off. It could have come off big time in terms of them making a profit if they'd have sold him much earlier.
Yeah.
They ended up losing money. I don't think they got a penny for him. I think he basically went on a free. Modric, he was told about Modric. The guy was absolutely brilliant. It was a few weeks before the Euros in 2008. He picked him up for 16.5 million, and he moved like lightning, and he did the deal. Anything where there is a deal where they can see a profit, they will move quickly. You look at the Porro situation. I mean, before I go on to Porro, let me go back to the starts of the ENIC, the first many years of ENIC, in terms of the transfer window. They will wait till the last week of the season of the transfer window to bring in players.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas managers want those players bought in the early part of the transfer window so they can integrate them into the team. But with the ENIC, it's all about doing the deal. It's not about the football team. It's not about making sure that the manager has got the players in place before the season to give us the best possible opportunity. We lost several points. The year we finished third behind Leicester, we lost several points in August. If we'd have had players in place, you know, I think it was Norwich and West Brom. We had 2 home draws, if my memory serves me correctly. I don't understand why they can't. You know, that there's a correlation between footballing success and financial success, and they saw that. I think their profits the year we reached the Champions League final were 113 million, and you would have thought, bang, you know, a light would have gone off. We can see that we've made record profits, but you know, with the club's best ever year. We've gone further in Europe than any other, even further in Europe than the double team. Nothing changes. Nothing will change. The one positive from their 22 years is that when they sell, they'll sell a club with a great infrastructure.
Correct.
And hopefully the next owners can then take it on because, you know, the groundwork's been done, the platform's there, and they can take the club on. This is a massive club. This is a massive club. And as a chairman, Daniel Levy's remit is to potentialise this club, and he doesn't do it. Not on the footballing side. The problem also is that he's not a football person. It's a bit like Ed Woodward at Man United, who made them loads of money through commercial deals, but made lots of mistakes when it came to transfers. And that's the problem. And that's why we've never quite hit the heights. You know, you look at since ENIC took over, we've won 1 League Cup. If my memory serves me correctly, I think Chelsea have won 19 trophies. I think City and United have won around 16, 15. Liverpool have won quite a few. Arsenal have won quite a few. And we've won 1. And we're meant to be part of the Big Six. We're not a Big Six club. Big Six in terms of fan base. Big Six in terms of the size of the club, the revenue of the club, but not in terms of trophies. And that's the problem. And the fans have seen through it now. The genie's out of the bottle and the fans are fed up with it.
Yeah.
And now you're seeing demonstrations.
I agree.
Oh, yes, you are.
I agree, Luba. I think that's part of the problem. I think like a lot of fans maybe are just, in my opinion, and anyone can jump in on this. Ian, if you want to as well, Shaggy, you can always jump in. But I just think that the fans are kind of now starting to open their eyes a bit more to what's been going on that some of us have seen for so long, and it's like the same. The repeat cycle of what keeps happening at this club. It's the same way they do transfer dealings, the same way they don't like. Can anyone here honestly sit here and say that you've ever heard the words out of Daniel Levy's mouth that he wants to compete for trophies? Because I've never heard it. Like, and that when you hear it from other, like Newcastle owners came in, the first statement they said is we want to compete and win the Premier League within the next 10 years. They've set a target of what they want. And that's the problem. We don't have a target of what we want to achieve on the football pitch. We might have targets for like for how much money we want to earn from the match day experiences, or we might have targets for what we want to earn, I don't know, from the NFL games each season. But do we have a target on the football pitch? We don't. And that's the biggest problem. And that's what I think the fans are starting to slowly see more and more of. And I think it's a good thing, to be honest with you. But I don't know if things will change. But look, I want to kind of get Ian's Shaggy's thoughts on this.
Yeah, that's okay. I'll come in. I don't know you once or twice. I think you've unmuted me, and I've been coughing and spluttering and what have you. So what I'll do is I'll have my bit here because I know there's a feedback problem because I'm only able to use my mobile because of where I am and the internet's not.
Yeah.
So I will go after this. and take some whiskey and go and get some sleep. It's up as 10 here anyway. So, look, I think there's a lot in what you say, and I do think, as I've said, I don't start repeating myself again and again. A lot of it is down to the ineffective communication that comes, from Tottenham Hotspur, in terms of where we're going. Now, some of the trust questions, I think Jay and I are absolutely on the same page in terms of there are things, like the naming rights deal and stuff like that are just so commercially sensitive. Yeah, I wouldn't expect this club, if they answered the question at all, to come out with anything other than something really anodyne, like talks are continuing, and we, when the, as I sounded like a politician, when the time is right. Sorry, that's my phone flashing up with the Spurs Express positive talks with Porro. Where have we heard it again? Again. And I think part of their own problem is that they don't communicate. And I think some of those trust questions that they did ask are absolutely germane and to the point. And that is, excuse me, and that is, we want to know what the strategy is. We, as stakeholders in the club, want to be able to invest ourselves emotionally on exactly where you want to take us as a club. And I think that failure to really to tell us in clear, unequivocal terms what the expectations are, what the targets are, is not unrealistic. And I do think if I was chairman of Tottenham Hotspur, I would be trying to set objectives that we want to be winning at least one cup in the next 2 years. We want to be in the top four every one of those years. We want to be challenging again for the championship or league championship and the Champions League within 5 years, and the resources will be put in place to make sure that happens. I don't think there's anything wrong with that, and I don't think there's anything wrong with supporters having that as an objective and for the trust to try and draw that out. I do sometimes feel that the board, Levy in particular, thinks it's my club and I'll do what I want. And I think that's part of his problem. I don't know that he, as a property man, he genuinely understands how much football fans are invested emotionally in the success of their club. In terms of trophies, there's always this: we've won one trophy in, the League Cup in 2008. Yet in that time, we've been in 7 semi-finals. I think we were in one the year before. This is FA Cup semi-finals. One the year before Enoch took over. Even on the law of averages, you get to 8 FA Cup semi-finals. I mean, I'm going back to the 80s. Lubo, you'll remember this as well. We got into semi-finals in the 80s. We won the cup. We won in 81, 82. All right, we lost in 87, but we got to a semi-final. We were going. Semi-finals were played on neutral grounds then. We were going to Wembley, and we did go to Wembley. Even on the law of averages, getting to 8 semi-finals, you would expect to get to 4 finals and win 2 of them. As a minimum. We've been in League Cup finals. We've been in Champions League finals. In 15, 16, 16, 17, we were the best team in England. We got the most points, but we didn't win the league. And I can't blame Levy for that. I might blame Levy in building the stadium and saying to Pochettino, you're not having money for your rebuild, when everybody knows now that money needed to be spent on the team. But I think there's some things that the board get blamed for and Levy gets blamed for that just aren't fair. We could have been more successful. A little bit of luck, we'd have been more successful. Who knows what would have happened if that ridiculous handball in Madrid hadn't been given against Sissoko. Under the laws of the game then, it was a penalty. But it was such a bad decision, they changed the laws of the game. And maybe I don't think it helped Liverpool.
Ian,
but,
can I ask you a question, right? Do you not think though that part of it is down towards Levy, right? And I'll mute you in a second, but what I'm trying to say is, right, is that we've had these chances over the years where all we needed was maybe one or two more players of quality in the squad could have been added at crucial times that we had. We were at the point where we just finished. What was it? After the fight finale at White Hart Lane, we finished second in the Premier League, and then we then go two windows without signing a single player. Like those kind of moments, isn't it not? That's the problem, because that's when really you should, even if we just got one player, just sign one player just to galvanize the squad, right? Galvanize that we're trying to do something. But it was like at a highest point that we've been at. You could say under Redknapp, you could say under Poch, that all we needed was that little push. Just invest a bit of money into the team, but they didn't do it. That's my problem, is that if I went back, right, and I looked at the kind of someone was messaging me on Twitter about the finals that we've been in over the last 10 years, or semi-finals, and I went back with them, and I actually showed them the squads, right, the first 11 and the substitute bench of those teams in those games, right. When you look at the comparison of the teams we were playing, it was night and day. We had players like Nkudu on the bench. We had players like Ng on the bench. And then you look at the other team, for example, the semi-final against Chelsea. They changed the game because they brought on Fabregas, Diego Costa, and Hazard, I think, in that game, right? And we brought on Kyle Walker. And yes, the managers at the time have the part to blame in their tactics and their decisions they make during these important decisions. But it doesn't help when you haven't got better tools to help you do your job in a better way, right?
Yeah,
do you know?
I agree. I agree a lot. And if you look at managerial decisions, I can't remember what year, but the League Cup final that we lost to Chelsea, the manager, the Pochettino, decides he's going to play Son at right wing back to counteract Moses. Or I think it must have been Conte's Chelsea.
That was the semi-final of the FA Cup. I was at that game.
Was it the semi? I mean, and what a disastrous decision that was. It was Pochettino who took the decision to play a half fit or a quarter fit Harry Kane in the Champions League final, and leave out Moura, who was absolutely on fire.
I can tell you one thing about that game. That there was a lot of political. There's a lot of things behind the scenes why Harry Kane played that game and why Moura didn't play. I'm telling you.
Well, all right. Maybe it's not for this, but I mean, all I can tell you, I was didn't go to the game, but I was in Madrid and came out of the sort of bar cum restaurant I was in, and a couple of lads came out of the place next door, and the first thing I was fucking Pochettino playing Harry fucking Kane, So there was a lot of anger on that. And these are the elite managers. Just one thing, and I'm just playing a bit of devil's advocate here. If they're not ambitious, the board, and they don't wish to win trophies, why have they brought in, as apart from Nuno, Mourinho and Conte, two elite managers that will demand money and managers that would expect to succeed? That's not consistent with a board that doesn't think it should be winning trophies. I mean, the cynic in me turns around and says, yeah, these are elite managers. What they can do is they can make the silk purse from the sow's ear, because they're elite coaches and they will coach players above to be above their ability and win things that lesser managers won't. That would be the cynical view. My other view is Conte, for example, wouldn't have come, November 21, unless he'd been given real assurances that monies would be made available. And in fairness, if you look at what our bench will be, forget Preston, because I don't know what team we'll play. But if you look at the bench that we'll put out in the next league game, is that Manchester City? Home at Manchester City? Is that the next 4th of February or thereabouts? That bench will be the strongest bench we'd have seen at Tottenham in maybe 20-something years. Maybe even longer, because of course we didn't have we didn't have 7, 8 players, whatever we're allowed to name anymore. 7 players, is it, or 9 players? But the bench and the reserve is going to be as strong as anything. So that's not consistent. We're not having ambition. Sometimes I think we just don't get lucky. Sometimes we don't get lucky.
I think there's an element of luck towards like when achieving things in football, right? There's definitely an element of luck towards it. But there's also has to be a plan in place to try and have a target to win something or to try and achieve a higher goal on the football pitch.
Yeah.
And without the plan, you won't get lucky because you have to have a plan in place to actually have a target to go for, right? What was our target? Like for example, we rode our luck towards that Champions League final run. That was very lucky we got there. We shouldn't have been there, to be honest with you, with the squad that we had. We shouldn't have been there, right? But this is what I'm saying. This is where, for me, I feel the board have failed the club and the fans, right? Because they focused on the other side of the company, should we say, in trying to maximize their revenue as much as they can in every other way, right? That's why I see it. I think fans want to see.
Sorry, Danny, I just want to say a couple of things because we're going to go through some comments shortly. But Jay has been sitting there waiting to talk. He's been doing his own mannequin challenges. Like I've never seen a guy sit so still. Literally, I was wondering if it's frozen. But I was going to say we've got 166 people watching. Thank you. We've just smashed 100 likes. So thank you very much indeed.
All of you guys.
I have to say you're getting a lot of compliments. When we go, everyone will give their Twitter handles and their social media so people can communicate because people are getting a lot of love in the comments. So Jay, you've been quiet for a little while. Let's open Pandora's box.
The thing for me is like the one thing that Tottenham fans are is revisionist. Fucking revisionist. We are revisionist masters. I'll get into it in a second, but I made some notes while we were talking because I thought there were some amazing points that you all made. For me, the history of Tottenham is we're unlucky. That is our history. We are unlucky. Whether it's the Champions League final with Liverpool, whether it's Chelsea winning the Champions League when we finished fourth, we are just historically unlucky. I think we have a curse. But let me, because everyone always
I'd agree to that.
Everyone always talks to me about, Spurs, who Spurs are. I started supporting Spurs in 94, yeah? Spurs have been losers. They were losers when I was growing up. We were losers. Don't tell me we weren't losers. Let's go through the stats, yeah? I pulled up the stats. So, yeah, we won the FA Cup in 91. Yeah, I get that. After that, we haven't made the FA Cup final again. So even in the 10 years before Levy took over, we didn't make a final in the FA Cup. So what are people telling me about we were successful or this? No, we weren't. Let's go through league positions. I want to go through league positions. So let's say the league positions before Levy took over. Let's say 91, 10th, 92, 15th, 93, 8th, 94, 15th. Yeah, 95, 7th. Yeah, 96, 8th. 97, 10th. 98, 14th. 99, 11th. 2000, 10th. So where's this history of us being a good side? Where's this history of us being a top side that Levy has absolutely failed to kick us on? Levy has failed. Nah. He created the Tottenham. He created this modern day Tottenham that you guys all think that he hasn't done enough with. Yeah, that's what he did. Whether you like it or not, I've just given you the stats. Yeah, those were what the finishing Champions League final, League Cup finals. Yeah, we made more finals in the time with Levy than we made before it. Is it Levy's fault that we lose those games? Listen, I'm going to talk about our positions after Levy took over. Okay. 9th, 5th, 11th. Shit, what happened there? 8th, 4th, 5th, 4th, 5th, 6th, 5th, 3rd, 2nd, 3rd. Listen, we weren't seeing these. We weren't even doing single digits.
Jay, can I just add one point, right? Who was in charge in those as the managers for us? It wasn't Levy that was in charge. It was the managers for us.
Listen, this is what I told you about the confirmation bias that you've got. You don't want to give Levy the credit for the stuff he did. Who was in charge? Well, we're not saying who was in charge when we lost finals. Who appointed these managers? Who appointed Ramos?
Look, no one said the managers are not to blame in the big. Look, I'm one of the Pochettino's biggest fans and biggest critics at the same time. In the biggest games under Poch, he made the biggest mistakes. Okay. But what I'm saying is that he didn't have as many tools as the other teams have had who have won trophies in the past.
But listen, I'm trying to say someone just says there's no credit.
It's like giving someone the best chance possible to try and achieve something. Right?
I'm gonna say he took us from being losers to the cusp of being the best team in Europe under his ownership. We were losers when he started. Yeah, go on. What I'm saying is a statement of fact. What you're saying is opinion. It's a statement of fact that we were.
It's not an opinion. It's not.
Well, it is.
It's a fact because the fact is we had people like Harry Winks and Musa Sissoko starting in the Champions League final.
You're singling out a moment. What I'm trying to say is,
but it's happened across all the moments we've had in the biggest moments that we've had in the last 10 years.
Listen, the thing is that at this point, the fan base is put together in terms of we should have more, we should do more. Yeah, but what I massively disagree with is when people say we haven't won anything for 22 years. That's a fucking outrageous statement to make, and I've just proven the facts as to why that's an outrageous statement to make.
No, Jay, what you just said is outrageous. What you just said is ridiculous. Ridiculous.
Hold on. Let me get this right.
It's just ridiculous. Let me tell you, since I started watching football.
No, it's not about. No. It's not about when you. It's not about when you started watching.
You've had your say.
No, I haven't had your say. No. Listen. I heard people talking.
I'm going to answer you.
Shit. I haven't had my say. No. Luba, I've been talking for about 3 minutes. It just sounded longer because you hate what I'm saying.
What you just come out with is ridiculous.
No. Stop for a second because I've said facts. I've given you facts.
Let me give you facts.
Let Lubo say something. Let Lubo talk, and then we'll let you rebuttal him after.
Let me give you facts.
Go on, hit it.
I started watching Spurs in '65.
What's that got to do with my statement?
Let me give you facts.
Let him talk. Go on.
67 FA Cup, 71 League Cup, 72 UEFA Cup, 73 League Cup, 81 FA Cup, 82 FA Cup. 84 UEFA Cup, 91 FA Cup, then switch across to Sugar, 99 League Cup, along obviously with several FA Cup semi-finals that we're in. So that's several. What's that? 7, 8, 9 trophies, plus all the Charity Shields visits that we had to Wembley. Since Enoch took over, 2008, 1 trophy. Mm-hmm. Now, football fans and clubs like Spurs expect to be in the game. They expect to be competitive. No guarantee we're going to win anything, and nobody would be arrogant to think that. But at least let's compete. You know, in the 80s, we competed for people like Gascoigne and Waddle and Lineker, and we bought players like that. And, you know, you go into the 90s and we got Klinsmann. But now, when do we compete for the top players? Arsenal and Chelsea went head to head. Well, Chelsea hijacked Mudryk. Mm-hmm. We've only seen 10, 15 minutes of him at Liverpool. The guy looked electric. I've seen him play in the Champions League this season. He is absolutely going to smash it in the Premier League. Yep. We're not even there. We're not even competing. Nobody would even think Tottenham would compete for a player like this. Just cool. Why are we not competing with Arsenal and Chelsea?
Not sure what that's got to do with my point, though. That's my point was very clear. In the 10 years that Enoch took over, we were a bottom half Premier League club. That's who we were. You're talking about the 80s. You're talking about the 80s. Nottingham Forest, because they were a big side back in the day, do they just get to be a big side? No, we were in the mud. That's where we were. The fact that we were a big side in the 80s is irrelevant to the side and club that Levy took over. Why is that not so obvious for people to see?
Because you cannot rinse the fans, Jay, for the highest prices. Unless you're prepared to compete,
that's a different point.
Players on the pitch.
It does tie into.
That is a different point that I agree with you on.
No, that's the biggest point.
What? That's not the point
That's
I'm
the
making.
biggest
You
point.
come in on my point.
You're
to bring
blind.
in
You are completely blind to what Enoch are doing.
What are you talking
You're
about?
totally blind.
What is acknowledging what somebody's done is not being blind. I have said on numerous occasions.
I said to you that they will sell the club with a fantastic infrastructure.
Listen,
That's what I said to you. So I'm not saying everything they've done is bad. I haven't said that.
Listen, who's
they
saying
have not, Jay, they have not backed managers
right
at certain times.
Absolutely. I've not disagreed with that point.
They're not prepared to go the whole hog, Jay. That's the problem.
And I think
the problem. Everybody can see it, and that's the problem that everybody has with Enoch.
Listen, I don't listen. This is the funniest thing for me, because at no point am I grateful or really happy for the job that Enoch's done over the last few years.
It doesn't sound like it. It sounds
no.
like
I have acknowledged.
Spokesman tonight.
I have acknowledged where they took us from to where they got us, and I see that they have clearly plateaued. That's clear to me. It's clear that Enoch, at this point in time, have not shown that they are capable of winning trophies in 2023.
Right. Can I ask you a question, Jay?
Go on.
Do you think that the success, right, that we've had on the pitch, right, is down to Levy, right, in the last 5, let's just say last 10 years for argument's sake? Do you think that's all down to Levy?
No, not at all, bro. No, not at all. Not even. I think that you can argue you got lucky with X, but you create your own luck, just as you create your own unluckiness when things go badly. I'm not a Enoch parasites or this or that. I just really categorically see who we were when I started supporting the club and who we are now. But I also acknowledge that there's a limitation to what they've done, and if they can't get us to the next level, they should leave. I've said that repeatedly. I've never not said that. So people try and put other words in my mouth because I say, well done for what they've done. Listen, if we've got a team that can finish 3rd, 2nd, 3rd, but we had a team that finishes 10th but wins an FA Cup, how is that on the owners? Like, that's not the owners' fault. They have given us a squad that is capable of winning these trophies. Yeah,
no, they haven't.
We haven't got over the what?
No, they didn't give us a squad. They gave us a first 11.
A team. Sorry, they gave us a team.
Because if we're honest, right, if we're gonna be honest, right, if we go back and we look at the squads that Pochettino had, he had an amazing, he had an amazing first 11. Like in my opinion, at the time, it was one of the best in Europe's, right? Yeah. Our players that we had in the first 11, but then you look at the bench, right? Mm-hmm. The problem that we had was we couldn't change games in the biggest moments because we had a weak bench. Conte is saying it every single press conference. We're hearing him say it. He's saying that the squad needs to be 17, 18 players deep to be able to have quality players to be able to compete for trophies, right?
The Jose one for me, that's the one where I was like, that's fucking ridiculous.
What, sacking before the final?
That for me was that for me is undefensible. So,
and I agree with you. And do you know what, Jay? I think what it is, what I see right from you is, I just think that you, in my opinion, how I see your views, right, is I just don't think you've seen some of the pain that some of us have seen over the last 20 years of how, basically, like the stuff that me, Brian, maybe would see, Lubo would see, is that we've seen the same mistakes over and over again from the board, right? And I get where you're coming from. I understand, right? Look, if we're going to be honest, right, where we were before, of course, financially, where we were as a club, right, where we were finishing the league 10 years before, we might have won an FA Cup and a League Cup, right? But if you look at where we've come and where we've grown as a club, right, we haven't, what's the word I'm looking for? We haven't taken that risk to go to the next level because of the risk averseness of how the ownership is, right? Yeah. So we've been stuck in this kind of limbo of between 6th, 7th, 5th, 4th. That's where we've been the last 10 years, right? Apart from a couple of seasons under Poch, where what he did was an absolute miracle to overachieve where we should have been. Even Daniel Levy, even if you look at where we were, right, we should never have been in that position. What Pochettino did, right, and this is the reason why I believe we were where we were. Pochettino came into a young team where he had some players there. He managed to get the whole fan base, the whole coaching staff, everyone believing in something, believing in this Tottenham team, right? He galvanized the fan base. Everyone was united under Pochettino. There was not one fan that would say a bad word about Pochettino in our prime under him, right? And that's because he gave the fans the belief that we could beat anyone if we gave it 100%, right? My problem was that we were at that point where we could have taken that next step to go to that elite level and really compete by buying a couple of top players or even one top player. And for me, what I see is that we keep doing the same mistakes. We keep going for the third options in the transfer windows. We don't take that risk. And I know, look, we have spent money, but also the problem is because of the way Levy is such a control freak, in my opinion, right? It's like what Ian Meth was saying earlier on about Levy wants to put his hands in absolutely everything. And he employs a manager, he employs a sporting director, and all the directors he's employed before to do their jobs. Paul Mitchell, right? His quotes were, "He turned my dream job into a nightmare." That tells you everything you need to know about how hard it is to work with someone like Daniel Levy. When we got to the point with Pochettino, right, where we were trying to drive this club up to second, third, competing for a title, Paul Mitchell was like, well, Daniel, now we're at this level. In order to get to the next level, we need to go for this caliber of player now, right? And he didn't want to do it. He didn't want to take that risk because it involves investing more capital, right, to do that. Right. And I think this is the problem with what Spurs fans have. When you're charged the highest season ticket prices, like Lubo was saying earlier, you expect a better product, right? You expect a product that at least is going to compete. Right?
I don't doubt that. But
I think
my point is only the moment at which you expect the better product or demand the better product differs from person to person. Yeah,
I agree.
For me, I know the moment that I expected the better product and I expected us to be doing X and Y. Some people ignore COVID. Some people give them an extra year because of COVID. Some people 10 years ago were sick and tired of this. Yeah. Some people appreciate what they build and acknowledge the landscape consistently changes and it gets more competitive and things changes and there's new threats and new teams and you end up losing a Berbatov when you don't expect to. And that sets the club back 2 years. You end up losing a Modric or a Carrick when you don't expect to. And it sets because you then at that time don't have, like, it's just one of those things for me. The people who are eating it out, I don't disagree with them. I understand why they're eating out every facet of what they're saying. My point is merely, we're not United. We're not Liverpool. We weren't Chelsea with a massive injection of cash. We weren't Arsenal. So those teams were above us. We have the 5th or 6th biggest revenue. The other 4 teams that have the bigger revenues are in the same league as us. They're not in a different league. They're in our league. People say, oh, you've got the 9th biggest revenue. But the 5 teams that have bigger revenues than us are also in the same league. So it comes a lot down to the team, the squad, and the strategy isn't good enough, in my opinion. And but there's been positive steps a lot for me as well.
Yeah, let me come in. Do people not think, though, that part of the problem is the way that Arsenal are doing? Not just the fact that they look like there's every probability now that they will win the league, but doing it with a kind of style and verve that we are synonymous with. And I hope, and there's a lot of people in the chat, I mean, I hope everybody watched that epic game on Sunday afternoon between Arsenal and Manchester United, because it doesn't matter who you support. It doesn't matter whether, you hate Arsenal or whatever. It was a phenomenal game of football played by 2 teams playing the game in exactly the right way. The way that we used to play the game and the way that we want to see Tottenham play the game. And it was 2 teams trying to win the game in the right way. It wasn't tippy-tappy football. Everything was done with passion, with energy, and with purpose. And they were 5th behind us last year. And you think, well, how have they managed to push on? Okay, you can say Arteta long-term planning and what have you, and I agree with that. But how have they managed to dwarf what we've done in the space of 8 months? It's frightening. That's one of the things that really bugs me.
I think they plugged their
Sorry,
team.
Jay, just before you speak, I just want the comments that I've had starred from the people in the chat. I just want to get through those very quickly, and then we'll go straight back. So I'm just going to run through them. So we've got my brother from Canada, Bobby Kay, saying the Tottenham board is as divided as the fans are right now, and in regards to the club's vision and how fans are treated, question mark. Rachel, God bless you, Rachel Hun. 21 years, he feeds us lies after lies. My friend Jason Duffel, big up Jason. Good, just to play devil's advocate, say Levy packs up and fucks off, please God. Potentially, we could end up with the likes of Mike Ashley. At least Levy, we know where we stand. Do you know what, Jason? All I will say with this one is, I'm willing to roll the dice. I'm willing to roll the dice. If we put it this way, and the only reason I say that is right now, whoever buys this club is going to have to be a superpower. Whoever buys this is going to have a big and with all the new football guidelines and everything that they do, you're going to have to see that they're flush with cash. So as much as I can see where that's coming from,
it's not just that, Brian. It's the fact that what the price that they're going to settle for it'll be like a record, like you said earlier, like the stuff that we were saying about how Levy wants the best of he wants to be known as the best of this and have the biggest bar in the stadium, have the best stadium, best multi-purpose this, the biggest naming rights deal. Again, he would want the best deal that he can get to say that he's got the record record sale of a club, right? So they're not gonna want anything like 3 or 4 billion. They're gonna want 5-6 billion for the club. That's what they're gonna value it at, because that's how they see it as what it's worth.
There we go. Let me just get through these again.
Hang on, quickly. Sorry
Go
on that.
Go on.
The Qatari investment. Apparently, they're basing a potential purchase on a purchase price of £2.5 billion for the club, and it's a proportion of that. So I'm not sure that this £5-6 million is actually accurate. We'll see if there's an investment and at what price, and of course where that money goes. That's another story. But I'm not sure they're being stupid. They have, as other people have said, made a mountain of money. And even if they sell the club, there is still a massive property empire in and around the Tottenham Hotspur Stadium, around the High Road. I just wanted to come in there.
Okay, cool. We just, like I said, I'm just going to get through these. Ben Kaufman put this up, bring up the super chat. Was obviously AV asked for, or we asked for 15 million for Grealish, Aston Villa, but we got offer 1.5 plus Onoma. Barry and Baxter, we make around 107 million euros per game as income. Poro's cost of 45 million euros. We could have bought Poro twice.
That's not right figure, by the way. To be honest, that's not the right figure. There's no way any team makes 107 million euros per game.
No, that's match day, including club shop and everything as well, sir.
No, it's not that much. It's not that much. It's nowhere near that much.
Enig, enough is enough. Another cheap loan deal yet again this week. Also, Brian was fabulous speaking on Sky Sports. Yeah, I had my bit on Sky Sports. They had to redo one question because I couldn't contain myself and swore. Only on one question. It's quite good for me. Then we've got Michael Walters, spot on Ian. Characteristics of a player doesn't matter to Levy, just value. Hence why we make mistakes in the market. He doesn't understand football. Got Richard Evans saying Chelsea and Arsenal fight. We've had this discussion over an £88 million player last week. Whilst we're looking for loan deals, Enoch out 22 years of failure. Big up Tim Man. We got a super chat from Tim Man. We are competing with Palace, Bournemouth, Villa, etc. in the transfer market. Says it all. When was the last time we bought that we didn't that went straight into our first 11 to push us to the next level? I honestly can't remember. There's another one. Then there's a question that I've missed out that I will go back to. Scott Spur, and I've seen that Scott Spur is doing what we've done, which was Brian Ireland's idea. When you fly a flag at half mast, we said until Levy's gone, the cockerel upside down. So that's a Tottenham on Tour original. So thank you, Scott Spur. Thank you for having these discussions. Keep it going. You're doing a good job. Thank you. And I know what's the story. FC has asked for people, so have people got channels. So obviously Danny and I have this one. These three are available on Twitter. just before we go back to talking, if people, Ian, as in Lubo, what's your Twitter handle?
I've also put the Twitter handles in the description of the show
as well,
so you can find.
There you go.
Can I just say the guy who said when was the last time we bought players that went straight into the first team? Well, Romero, Benson, Kerr, and Kulusevski are 3.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, that's a good point.
Yeah.
You know,
And also Porro will be a 4th because Porro is pretty much done.
Yeah, Udogie will be a 5th.
Yeah.
There you go. I actually was going way back. I was actually thinking Van der Vaart. That's how I was just thinking that had an impact.
I think what he was probably trying to get at was a world-class player or someone who is at the top of their game. That's what he was. Yeah. He was probably trying to say, which was probably I would say Van der Vaart as well. But in terms of players that have gone into the first team, Lubo is right. Kulu, Benson, Coromero, they went straight into the first team. And we're going to get Porro. It's definitely done. It's a matter of time. And hopefully he'll be a good signing. And then Udogie next season as well.
There you go. So where were we now? The next question. Well, I will be dropping off in half an hour.
Can I just say, just want to say to Jay, go back, study the Tottenham Hotspur history.
Why?
Because you are unaware. Because you only focus on recent history, and you'll understand where people like me are coming from. We were one of the big 5.
Okay.
Leading up to when Sugar bought the club.
Yeah, in terms of the breakaway.
That helped push through Premier League, the Sky deal, the whole thing. Yeah, we had a few fallow years in terms of league position. We drifted off in the 90s. They weren't particularly good, but we still won 2 trophies.
Okay, so
that's where we were coming from. We were buying players. You know, Jimmy Greaves, go back 60 years, it doesn't matter. That was a record fee. Martin Peters record fee.
Okay.
You know, we got Gascoigne. We beat Man United and Ferguson to Gascoigne.
Mm-hmm.
We're a big club. We don't compete for these players anymore. We're not at the races.
That's fair.
You know that. You can just see what Arsenal and Chelsea have been doing.
We're not disagreeing, but my point is that I've been a Spurs fan since 1990. I've been a Spurs fan my whole life, since day dot. So from day dot, we've not been a good side, and I appreciate that 30 years is long enough. I get people will be like, well, you need to go back 40, you need to go back 50, and I get why newer fans, shorter attention spans want success, but I'm like, there's no God-given right.
Of course there isn't. Of course there isn't.
Blackburn won the league in 95 and have been relegated in this. And so I'm not trying to say that we should be anything. I don't know what we should be. And I'm just like, now I think we should be winning titles. That's what I expect of the club. But the fact that I didn't think that 7 years ago, per se, that doesn't make me a bad fan. It just makes me realistic of the situation we were in under Levy at that moment. Now I'm like, listen, if you can't deliver what we need, you need to leave. 7 years ago, I'm not saying that because he's about to deliver us a new stadium. So any judgment, do you know what I mean? Go on. So any judgment, God.
Jay, we were third at Christmas. I think it was 2012.
Yeah.
Was it 2012, 2011, 2012?
Yeah,
Harry that wanted Tevez and Cahill, and he got Nelson and
Louis Saha.
Yeah,
listen, I didn't say the guy hasn't fucked
up. A couple of years later, Poch had Mane and Wijnaldum down at the club.
Yeah.
After he joined soon after from Southampton. Yeah. We lost those deals. We lost Hazard. We lost Grealish. We could have had all these players. Bruno Fernandes turned around to his teammates and said he's joining Tottenham. But no, we pulled the plug on a 55 million euro deal. And hang on, offered 45 million euros.
Yeah.
That was around £8 million at the time. Fernandes, that in January, joined Man United, took him into the Champions League. Yeah. We're in the Europa League, and that cost us about 40 to 50 million pounds, give or take. So to save £8 million, it cost him 40.
Yeah.
Where's the sense? Sorry, how clever is that?
That's not clever, and they've got
the problem is he's penny wise and pound foolish.
Exactly.
When it comes to football,
and I agree with that. And we're at a point now that we have no more goodwill, no more string, no more rope, no more great deal Levy. We're all in the same position. we just look back over the last 10, 15 years slightly differently. It doesn't mean we're not at the same end point here now. And it's like, I think we've done pretty well since Paratici came in with signings. There's a hint of a vision. Now, if we were to bring in somebody new and stuff, like a new owner and stuff, I'd be like, great. Well, maybe they'll do a Bowley and fuck up the whole club before they make it better or something like that. Or maybe
hang on, hold on. Why has Bowley fucked up the club?
No, I mean initially when he started, so the team went further away from where it needed to be, and then it's going to come back. So Spurs,
Jay, look at Arsenal.
Yeah,
8th and 5th.
Yeah, but this could be our 8th season. You know, like with Arsenal, like as in they needed to get certain positions, and then the whole floor lifted. New keeper, new centre backs, the whole floor of the team lifts. Porro, the whole floor lifts. I don't think we're as far away from being successful as other people. That's why I'm like, okay, one more window. And then we will all clearly see in the summer whether Levy is backing Conte. We need 2 high-quality centre-backs. We need a top replacement goalie. We need a creative mid. If we get those 4 players, nobody can tell me that we can't have a very good season next season.
No, but the question I want to ask you is let's say February, we have the financials come out.
Yeah.
And they come out and they are as explosive as we think we're going to be. And we've seen that we've wasted 25 days for Porro, which is now about to become 26.
Mm-hmm.
We have this line where it starts off saying, and we hear this from the club, we're looking for opportunities. And we know what that means. They're looking for a deal. Skriniar, someone they've wanted for 3 years, is available at 20 million right now. It's go get him, 20 mil, Inter want to sell him like we have with Ericsson.
Mm-hmm.
And then if we get to February, the 1st, 2nd, 3rd, whatever day it is, and we haven't seen that we could have easily gone and just paid 20 million. We could have easily just. How is that acceptable? You know, that's the thing. This is where, because I know you said one more window if we get Porro, if we get this.
Mm-hmm.
But we have struggled to get Porro.
Mm-hmm.
Just to agree, we may have shaved a couple of million off.
Yeah.
I would have rather had Porro playing on the right wing back against Arsenal, against Manchester City. Like last year, when Kulusevski and Bentancur came in, I'd have liked them to play both legs in the Carabao Cup semi-final we were in.
Mm-hmm.
The Chelsea Premier League game could have been the North London derby, but we all know they ran away. The Leicester game, all right, we won. But these points that we're losing in January, where he could have just been in, and a Skriniar could have. And I'm saying Skriniar now because he's been spoken about because PSG apparently fallen through. If we come to January and it's only Porro and Danjuma, but we see we have record profits like sky high, do you still say one more window, or do you say what the fuck have you just done?
I'd still say one more window because that money would need to be spent. Like as in it wouldn't change. Like I said, I'm not being knee jerk. I said I wanted to give them 4 windows with Conte. I'm going to give them 4 windows with Conte, and I hope that they finish it off well. But it's just like I said, you know, I get what people say. FSG, Liverpool fans got FSG out, and then they won them a league and a Champions League. Arsenal fans were Kroenke out, and now they're top of the league. It is very possible to change the momentum, but it needs to be a conscious effort. And if I don't see it, I'm with it. I think the track record of Liverpool and Arsenal tells me that you can change the momentum with this and give a manager a title-winning squad.
So just before we come to the super chat, and I want to come to Shaggy on this.
Yep.
I agree with you, Jay, but do you not think that has to come from the top in order to do that? Because that's so if we can all agree that has to come from the board, right? The board have to set the targets for this club, right?
Yeah.
And I can see from what you're saying, right, is that you're willing to give it more time, right? That's the difference between
one more window, the summer window.
What the summer window? Okay, fair enough, right? That's it. That's fine. That's your opinion.
Danny, Arsenal gave Arteta 6 windows, didn't they?
Yeah, they did. They did.
So Paritici's bringing in the right players, window by window. Yeah. But we've also got to get rid of. I mean, how many players do we have to get rid of?
at least
Yeah.
13 to 15.
9, 10,
Yeah.
12.
Yeah. I agree with you, Jay. Yeah, 13 to 15 players. Yeah.
And the problem is that the prices are set too high, so that clubs don't buy.
But I think, Ian, this summer you're gonna see us. We're gonna split. Conte stays. We will fire sale these motherfuckers.
So
Like,
can I ask you?
honestly,
Can I ask you a question, Jay? Right,
Right.
because the stuff I know, right, and Lubo might know some of the things as well. That if Conte does walk out, that to me already, right, tells me what the ambition of the club are, because they're not willing to match his ambitions. The stuff that I've been told, right, is that stuff was already agreed with an extension for Conte, and the terms were changed at the last minute. Well, when they put it out in writing, the terms were changed, and Conte wasn't happy with it, right? Look, I can tell you off stage after what's actually happened.
Yeah. But the thing is,
what I'm saying is that for me, if someone like Conte leaves, and Harry Kane is tied to if Conte stays or not, he's going to leave this club, or he's going to want out if Conte is gone. If Conte walks out, I know for a fact the club won't sack him, and I know that he won't walk out, right? Because he wants to be at the club. It's just that he wants to be given assurances of what, in order. I'm not saying 200-300 million a window, just given the assurances that he has a more control in who comes out and who goes into the squad, and actually get rid of them, right? That's the club's job to do. That's not his job to get rid. He will say, I want them out. I want them out, right? But what I feel is kind of gonna happen is that if Conte walks out and Kane says, look, I don't want to be at this club anymore. For me, that's the biggest indication, right? That is showing from the club to say that we don't match the ambitions of Harry Kane and Antonio Conte, right? Yeah. So if they don't come out and say, right, we're going to be a top 4 team, that's all we're going to be, right? Yeah. Do you not think that then in that moment, then it's a bit more untenable for them, because they're not gonna take us to that next level?
The thing is that I'm gonna feel sorry for Levy in the summer, because it could be Conte just wants to go home. It could be that Conte just wants to go back to his family.
I can tell you he doesn't want to go home. I can tell you that for a fact.
So my thing is that this is it's one of those like double jeopardy things for Levy. Don't matter for what reason Conte leaves. Yeah, if he does leave, I don't see a way forward really for Levy if Conte leaves, because the fans will blame Levy for that, no matter what the reason is. Yeah, Conte could say, I want a £500 million budget, and Levy's like, I can't do that. And he's like, don't matter, I'm leaving. Don't matter the reason, doesn't matter the rationale. It'll be very hard for Levy to stay at this club if Conte doesn't. All three of these people's futures are intertwined, in my opinion. And that's why I think it's going to work, because the alternative is Armageddon. It's ground zero, which is fine. You know, it's cool. It's Tottenham, just another rebuild.
Do you think Levy then in the summer, if Conte walks out, do you think he's going to sit there and worry about what the fans think? If we're going to still keep going to the games, buying season ticket, buying merchandise, paying for beers in the stadium, do you think he's going to really be bothered if the money's still coming in?
Yeah, if the crowds drop, if the attendances drop, they'll be bothered.
Yeah, of course, 100%. Yeah,
if there's 40,000 coming through the door, they'll be bothered.
Yeah, of course. But do you think though that would happen? Do you think?
I think if Conte leaves, the fan base could be sufficiently jaded for this to start happening.
And do you think though, if he brings that, go on.
Kane leaves, more to the point.
I agree with that.
Danny, sorry guys, just before you go on, I'm gonna have to drop off. I've had something come up. You carry on, Danny. I might be able to come back.
All right.
But I'll leave you.
We'll go as long as people want to stay on. If you guys are happy to stay on a little bit longer, we can go for a bit longer, and then
Ian,
just let me know.
Ian,
call it
Lubo, I'll speak to you very soon. I'll speak to you tomorrow. Jay, we'll speak soon, brother.
Always a pleasure, Brian.
Shaggy, we'll speak always. It feels weird doing this on my own channel, but we've got to do it. And as always, Levy out.
See you later.
Be in touch, Brian. Yeah, I'm going to want to head off soon as well, Danny.
Sure.
So, struggling a little bit with this cough. You probably, I don't know, some of it you can hear. You've got me blanked. I mean, I tend to agree with the other boys. I think that if Conte walks because of a lack of ambition, and it goes back to the point I made last time I was talking, is why is Levy bringing in these elite coaches only to fail? It doesn't make sense unless he thinks he can get elite coaches to make, as I said before, the silk purse from the sow's ear and get them to win trophies without putting the money in. I don't know with Levy. I don't know.
Ian, that's correct. You're spot on.
Well,
you are absolutely spot on.
I might be. I might be. But then again, when he was on the verge of winning, not on the verge, when he was in a cup final, he sacked Mourinho 4 days before it. I never quite understand that. But I think Levy is not stupid. I think he understands that there is a groundswell. I don't think it's very big. I think he'd have, with Brian's protest at the training ground last week with 26 people turn up, I don't think he'll be, crying into his cornflakes that's not a mass movement.
Ian, what's your recording of the Fulham game?
To be honest with you, I don't know what was going on at the Fulham game. I saw it and I heard lots of stuff, but mainly the Y word being chanted every.
No, that was just for 5 minutes, on and off, leaving out virtually from the first minute to after the match.
It was even Sky were talking about it. They kept talking about it.
Probably just my tele reception here then, but yeah, okay. And I think if that carries on, there will be an increasing move to get rid of him, but it's not really Levy out, is it? It's ENIC out. I don't think Levy's leaving, and ENIC are putting in somebody else to run the club and run the business. I just think that's absolute nonsense. The whole thing has got to go, and then of course there has to be a willing buyer. And when he's not here to defend himself, but when Brian says I'll roll the dice with Mike Ashley, I mean, come on, let's not.
I disagree with Brian there. I definitely wouldn't be doing that.
Yeah. But there are some people you would roll the dice with. You'd think the stadium would be valuable to an American owner. Excuse me. With the potential for American football and what have you. But a lot of this goes back, Ian, to some of the very sensible questions, not the business ones, but the sensible questions the trust were putting, in that we need to buy in to what the club's ambitions are, and we want to know what the ambitions are. If Conte and Kane were to leave on account of a lack of ambition, that will tell the supporters a lot. And I think a lot, you might find that this very small movement now becomes a much bigger one if, an elite manager, and if the football was better, I think Conte would have more support. I haven't heard Antonio ringing around the ground for a long time. And Kane
they were singing it at Fulham.
Yeah,
at Fulham.
Okay. The crowd was loud. I obviously wasn't listening closely enough. But we're still in 2 cups. We're still in 2 cups. I think Skriniar is an interesting one because apparently PSG are certainly not going to do that deal. Yeah. Now, Skriniar is the antithesis of a Levy signing. You maybe get him for 20 million quid, and you've got no resale value.
Yeah,
that is not a Levy signing. And to me, this was about what the stadium was meant to do and the club's ambition was meant to do, that we would buy players that would take us to another level without necessarily looking at it through the P&L account. Yeah. And I think if we were to be able to sign Skriniar, then I think it would show everybody about the level of ambition, because somebody like that would make a massive difference, to our defence and our ability to push on even from here into the top 4 still there. And that we're still into Danny, take it from me. I need to cough.
Go on. But look, I what do you think? Go on, Ian, if you want to come back in, Ian.
Yeah, that's okay, thanks. So what do I think in terms of what? I mean, I think we have bought some good players. There's a message from Brian there. I don't think we can listen to that while we're
we can listen
for the
after.
Scoop Tonight show. What was I going to say? He's probably been listening to what I want to say, and he's giving me some jip for it. But I want to see how this window shapes up. But at some point, Levy has to take the blinkers off in terms of the players he's buying. Not least of which we bought a lot of young players who are supposed to take, have big resale values, and we can't get them out the door. We haven't been able to sell them, and I haven't, known any. I don't know if there's been any cash offer, for example, for Ndombele, any at all. So,
Ian, Napoli, if they make the Champions League, similar contract for 30 million. I'm not sure if it's euros
It's
or
about
pounds.
30 million. Yeah, 30 million, I think.
That's
30 million.
That is agreed.
Okay. Well, that's half what we paid for him. So still bad business from us. But okay, that would be good news because that's money into the coffers.
Well,
and I'm sure there's a budget plus player sales. If only we could make some player sales.
I think most fans, including Jay, was saying earlier that he'd take 20 million for him last summer. If some money for him. So to take 30 million for a player who's basically been hopeless for us, I think is at least getting some money back on an absolute failure of a signing.
Dud.
Yeah, a dud. Exactly that. So I think at least that then you can say, well, at least you've got money back from that, and that can also go into supposedly is how Tottenham. We're always told that we're a sell to buy club, so we have to sell players to help with the transfer kitty. So that's 30 million towards what we could be using in the summer for someone, right?
Yeah.
So I think that's always going to help. And I mean, Lubo, what do you think? Like, I want to kind of ask you guys this question about what do you think? First of all, what do you expect from Tottenham? Where do you expect to see us be in the position we should be in? Do you think that fans are expecting too much, or do you think is it that we how do I put it? Do you think the fans expect too much from the club and the board and stuff like that, or do you think we deserve that because of, like, for example, how much money we pay for our season tickets and things like that?
Can I answer that first?
Yeah, go for it, Lubo.
I think if you look at now we're through COVID, the ground's up and running. They're bringing in big money. I genuinely think that we're entitled to be challenging top three. But again, if I had a message for the owners, it would be: you built the club up, you built the infrastructure up, you're going to sell it and you're going to make an enormous profit, but have a go. Don't sell it off and look back and think, just maybe 1% of you might think, I wish we'd have had a go. I wish we'd have tried to compete properly, consistently.
I agree. I think
if there's a top player, Ian, who's up for 80 million, like Guardiola, go and get him. If the Qataris
would you guys be happy then? And I want to ask Jay as well, so this applies to everyone. You can all answer. Would you be happy then, say in the summer, right, we go and sign one player for 80 million? That's it. No other players, just one absolute top-class player. Would you be happy with that?
No.
What's the reason you wouldn't be happy with that?
Because we need a rebuild. We need to probably spend 250 million.
I would agree with that. I would go slightly less. I reckon we could get away with 200. Man, I actually think we could get away with 150 to 200. I don't want to do it cheap, but I mean,
Trey, you just said before that we need to get rid of 13, 14 players.
Oh, true. We'll have additional.
They've got to be replaced, haven't they?
True.
They've got to be replaced, and the difference is going to be more than 150.
That's fair. 200 to 250.
Supposedly, we spent 150 last summer.
Well, I mean, we're going to have to make Kulusevski permanent. We need 2 high-quality centre-backs, so I'd like us to spend at least 80 to 100 million on those 2 players.
I'd agree.
And then, obviously, goalie, I think that needs to be homegrown because our squad homegrown numbers don't look good. I'm so devastated that Pope went to Newcastle because I thought he was the guy. He out of all the home ground,
10 million.
10 million. Horrible, and that's another. See, now I agree with you on Levy there. Stingy. Go and get Forster for free. instead of going to
Yeah.
get Pope for
Pope.
10 million. That's a fuck up to me.
Absolutely.
That's so
Absolutely.
again, this all adds to the narrative, but he's getting a pass because some of these other players, like you've acknowledged, the Benson Cores, the Romeros, you know, these players are good players. Like these players are going to carry this FC for the next, you know, 3-4 years. So that's why I'm not so adamantly, and even the other players like the SARS and Gills, I think those guys just have a different development timeline. I think they're both going to be excellent players, but they
And what
just.
if Kane leaves? And what if Kane goes? How is that going to change the dynamic of the team? What do you think?
I think
He's carried this team, hasn't he?
Well,
Yeah,
you're completely right. We essentially would have to buy a playmaker. We'd have to split his duties and responsibilities in half again. So
you need two players to replace.
Yeah, we need a playmaker and we need a striker. We've got Richarlison.
Jay, you probably need three. You probably need two strikers to replace.
I'd say you'd want Richarlison. You'd basically for that fee that you get for Kane, you'd like, can we find 250 to 60 to 70? Tony's probably up there on the list that you'd want to use to get a replacement.
He's going to be banned from football for a significant period of time.
Yeah,
a significant period.
I think it could be his. I think it could be his career, personally.
Yeah, I mean, they're always, you know, lifetime bans are always difficult from a legal perspective. But I mean, I think there was just over 300 betting charges. One thing you won't know, but I've chaired Scottish judicial panels. I've first season off, but I did them for about 7 or 8 years, including chairing a number of betting cases. And maybe it won't astonish you, but how much detail the betting companies go into to spot fraudulent betting patterns and what have you, and when players are involved. And if there's 300, they've charged them with 300 cases, there will be a massive paper trail, and the penalties for betting on football for footballers are massive. I love the player. I remember when we beat Brentford December 21, at being at the game and saying, God, I'd love him at Tottenham. And there's people saying, oh, he's not good enough, not good enough. Is he bollocks? He would be brilliant for us. But unfortunately, he's not going to be an option. I think he's going to be, in all probability, he's going to be out the game for more than 12 months, maybe 24 months.
Yeah, it's a shame because he's a good player as well. I would have
Great player. Great player.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, that's another problem though. Would Spurs go and pay what Brentford would want for someone like him? Probably not.
Well, I was just gonna say, like, obviously, like, it looks like so. It's one of these things where it's like I don't know who plays Football Manager or anything, but it's just transfer fees now. They're just mad. That's another reason why I give not Levy Enoch a bit of slack, but it's just I don't think anybody anticipated the explosion in the transfer fees over the last few years, because it's just crazy what you have to pay for, like, even average players. Someone like Gakpo, yeah, Liverpool spent 35 million. I'm not sure he'd make our squad. Like, as in, I'm not sure. I'm not sure he's better than Danjuma. He's definitely not better than Richarlison. Not better than Son. Like, you're having to pay a lot of money for bang average players nowadays. And
it's inflation, isn't it, in the football nowadays? That's the
of
problem.
course, we're making more money, and I think for me as well, like, if we do make money, yeah, like we someone just mentioned it now, succession planning for our players. We're not that good at it. Like, we play our players until they just become redundant. I remember that game that Vertonghen played at left wing back, and I think they talk about games that shorten your career, and I'm pretty sure that one game probably took about a year off him in the Premier League, because he was just so. And I think that's the biggest issue. Like, that maybe is I'll cede to your point, Ian, earlier, in terms of maybe my expectations for the club have not been high enough for long enough. Do you know what I mean? Because I'm saying, well, I'm okay with. I'm basically, I want to see us compete, and it's always been about the tactics and the strategy and the kind of transfers you're making rather than the money that you spend. We're not I've always seen Spurs as not a massive spending club. Like I don't know whether it's because it's Enoch or anything, but I've always seen us as being the team that's kind of organic. We don't kind of, do you know what I mean? We're just not. We're not the Saudi-owned club. We're not the.
I pulled some figures up from the internet about transfers, Tottenham transfers from the start of the Premier League.
Yeah.
And there is a net spend over 30 years of 298 million. So the net spend average from 92-93 to the end of last season is 9,950,000 per year.
Wow.
Okay.
So
that's pretty low.
This is not a big spending club.
No.
In terms of strategy, how can you have a strategy when you've got 14 managers in 22 years?
That's true. That's true.
And they're all changing. Poch brought players through. You know, he tried to work and bring kids through.
Yeah.
He played a different style to Mourinho. Nuno played a different style to again, and Conte changed the style from 4 at the back to 5 at the back. So you've got 4 managers in 3.5 years.
Yeah,
not even that. They're all playing a different style.
Yeah.
So you've got players. If you go through the first team, you've got players from, I think, 5 different managers plus Harry Kane from the academy.
Mm-hmm.
So you've got players that are the choices of 5 different people who've all got a different idea.
Yeah.
Regarding
Do you know to add to that, right, guys, as well, Lubo, I think there's only one actual team in that era in the last 30 years who've had more managers than us, right? Can you guess who that is?
Would it be Chelsea?
It is Chelsea. But do you know why they're so successful?
Because maybe they don't accept mediocrity. Is that what you're going to say?
Well,
right.
That is one. No, you're right. You're right.
Yeah.
It's because they've had an owner who wanted to pump money into the club because he wanted to achieve football glory, right? Glory on the pitch, right?
Yeah.
That models only work for them because time and time again, regardless of who the manager is, they're consistently pumping money into that football team, right? Abramovich loaned over £1 billion to Chelsea, right, from his own money to pump money into the club. So, and this is where you're trying to compete with those type of owners and manage and kind of clubs, right? Now, what Lubo was saying about when he first came in, he brought in, he tried to kind of get some kids from the youth and coach them to better. Now, even coach them to a better level to where we've got to this level, right? Where now we need to take that jump to the next bit, right? Even Pochettino, if you go back to his comments when he was managing us, he even said, when I first came into Tottenham, it was easier to bring the youth into the team because our targets were different, right? He said a player would have to be, he actually used the words, a player would be like a 6 or 7 out of 10, right? In that first tournament. But then when he got to that level where he was in the Champions League and he was competing, he goes, the reason why it's harder to get players from the academy now is because in order to get into that first team and to be able to be ready for that or that squad, they need to be an 8 or a 9. Right. And that was the problem, that we didn't have our academy was also lacking because a lot of the people who made the academy kids good, they'd all left the club for other jobs. Right. And that was the problem because we stopped producing in the academy. It was harder for Poch to bring the youth through the academy, right? Because we needed a better level of players coming through because of where we were and because they weren't investing into the team. That's why we kept dropping back and we've dropped so far back where we are now.
But also on the other side, like you also have to acknowledge the fact that, like I depending on whether or not I've had a bad day or not, I say to myself, did Poch squander our birthright? Because like the Leicester season, the Chelsea season, those should have been our titles. And the question to me is, would Klopp have got us over the line? I think he would. Same squad. Conte, would he have got us over the line? I think he would. Same squad.
Hang on, Jay. Klopp and Guardiola have had bigger squads to get their teams over the line.
But in those specific seasons.
I'm talking about those specific seasons.
No, but what I'm saying, in that season, our squad, if you gave Klopp the same squad of players that we had, the exact same squad of players, could we have won the league?
I'll be honest with you, Jay. My opinion is I don't think anyone could have gotten over that line. I think in that moment, Poch was the best person for us because of the limitations that he did have. The reason why we, in my opinion, overachieved in those times is because we didn't have a deep enough squad. We said it earlier on, we had a first 11. But as soon as you took one of those players out of that first 11, that's when we started to drop our results, or we weren't getting over the line.
You had Son in that first season, just as like the 12th man.
Yeah.
And that was it. And after that, there was a big drop. And unfortunately, Liverpool and City have built bigger squads.
Yeah. The next season, I did feel we were unlucky that Chelsea had no Europe, because I felt if Chelsea had Europe that season, we win the league.
Leicester had no Europe.
Exactly. So the 2 seasons,
or injuries.
Exactly. No. So
or injuries.
But that's my thing. Is like, obviously, I'm like, we could. No, maybe not the league, but in terms of winning a trophy, like I think Poch could have prioritized a trophy or two. Like, as in that's, and I think I agree. That came back to bite him at the end of this time, because when we needed to stick with him and we've seen Klopp. We've seen what happens with Klopp. So it wasn't just a Poch thing. It's your players can fall off a cliff from an ability point of view, and that's not on you as a manager. That's your players have declined. And we see it now with Klopp. Same thing happening to Liverpool now as happened to us when we fell off. And you see that and you think, if only Poch had won a trophy, then a lot of fans were abandoning him too at the time. So he didn't have enough of a sturdiness for us to keep him, because that away form that year was so bad. Do you know what I mean? And we fell into the Champions League. Remember, Arsenal lost to Palace at home. Like, if they hadn't lost to Palace at home, I don't think we would have made Champions League that year, because we were out on our feet.
Well, the difference between us getting in the Champions League and not getting in the Champions League was the penalty save from Aubameyang by Lloris at Wembley.
True.
Yeah.
That's
if he had scored, Arsenal would have finished fourth and we'd have finished fifth, because there was a point between us.
Yeah.
No,
and that would have won them the game.
That's fair, and I think that obviously that's where you need to obviously push back. And I guess I say, like, our squads haven't been good enough in order for a sustained success across a number of levels. And I think that's, but I think the squad is getting a bit better now. Like, when's the last time we had midfielders of the quality of Bizuma on the bench, or, 2 or 3 forward options where you like, okay, we got Gil, the youngster, we got Danjuma, we got Richarlison. In my life, we've never had like that much quality on the bench. So it's going in the right direction. That's why I'm not as pessimistic, because it's a bit like, well, what's the feasibility of us getting Enoch out before the end of the summer window?
I must tell you, Jay, I think you need billionaires to buy clubs now, and they're not 10 a penny.
True.
So I think the best solution would be just for Enoch to actually have a go. They're going to make a fortune when they sell the club.
Yeah.
So they've got that security in terms of, their ambition is to make a shed load of money. Fine, you're going to make a shed load of money, but at least have a go now.
Yeah.
Try and compete for players. Try and, okay, if the wages go up, but the problem's always been, and I believe I've been told several times, that the club's been up for sale for several years. So they don't want to start spending too heavily, just in case somebody comes in and the spending affects the balance sheet.
True.
So we constantly
one eye looking over at the potential sale,
all the time. So they're not committed to footballing success.
Yeah.
And one of the things that was mentioned before, what are the club's ambitions? Tell us what they are. Well, these aren't owners that have been here 6 months, and we're asking the question because we don't know. They've been here 22 years in March.
Yeah.
And just cast your mind back over the last 22 years, and just see that they built this massive infrastructure. They've got a multi-purpose stadium.
Yeah.
It used to be known as a football stadium. Then I think they market it as a multi-purpose stadium.
Yeah.
We used to be fans and supporters. Now we're client reference numbers. So their priority is profit. If they put half as much effort into the football side as they do into making a profit, we'd probably be European champions by now.
And
Yeah.
listen,
I wouldn't disagree with that.
that's what I'm saying. I think obviously everything coming into one side. I think the main thing for me now is whether or not you obviously experience success as a Spurs fan growing up, or whether or not I didn't. At this moment in time, everybody looks at what we've built and says, "Okay, now is the time." Because for me personally, there's a drawbridge going up with 5 teams. You got United, you got Arsenal, you got City, you got Chelsea, you got Newcastle. Those 5.
Liverpool.
Yeah.
I'm not even saying them definitively because they're in a somewhat similar position to us in terms of.
But they'll bounce back. And
They've got a better brand. Yeah, they've got a better brand. And if they get Bellingham, they'll be in the drawbridge. So that leaves us outside with the team snapping at our heels, like the Brentfords and the Brighton, who might start loading their business model because they perfected their model now. So the next step for them is to be like, let's turn the temperature up a little bit more on this. Let's buy some slightly higher quality players and let's see how that model works.
And are people going to want to spend what they're spending on tickets for Spurs if they're 9th and 10th?
No, and rightly so.
Do you think
you pay Premier League leading prices for the 6th or 7th best team in the Premier League? It's bad economics, especially in this economic climate, no?
Sure.
I agree. Do you think then that then if that was to happen, then that if they don't pull the trigger now and actually back up, like let's just say push Conte on. We don't have to say fully back him because look, let's be honest, no manager is fully backed. Ash was making a point in one of the spaces the other night about Arteta, and if you look at who his main targets were, a lot of them he didn't get, but they stuck with the plan and bought the players who fit their plan, and that's where they are, right?
But you know the one transfer that made the difference for me, the big one was Ben White, because that's backing a vision. There's no way Levy would have spent 50 million on Ben White because of his profile.
That's right. He wouldn't spend 63 on Diaz, and he wouldn't spend 54 on Screening.
Yeah. But Arsenal said, nope. You know what? Yeah. Okay, we're going to buy Saliba and we're going to loan him out for 2 years. And in 2 years, he's going to be ready. Like 50 million Ben White.
And that's a plan.
They're not going to buckle. They're not going to buckle. Fuck it. Pay 50 million on Ben White. Yeah. It's like, okay, Vlahovic, can't get him. Right. Okay, if you don't buy a striker, you might miss out on the top 4. But if you do buy a striker, you're going to block the pathway for us potentially to buy Jesus in the summer. What do you want to do, Mikel? Fuck it. No striker. Miss out on top 4. And I guess for us, I think our version of that is Longley. Like, I think that's our version of their Jesus. Like, our 2 centre-backs is their version of Jesus and Zinchenko. When we put them into the team, the levels, we've already got Udogie, we got Porro coming in. So I'm saying those 2 now are going to lift the floor. Kim Min-jae, someone like that. Kim Min-jae, a Hincapié, Bastoni, something. Just bring me quality.
If they don't bring centre-backs in, it changes the whole situation.
Oh, we're finished. Conte would walk.
But this is the problem, Jay, right? That we've got, and we're going to have the dilemma in the summer because Conte hasn't signed his contract yet. And if he does go, I'm telling you now, Kane's finished at this club. He will want no part in what's going on next because he knows there's another 5-year plan.
Why would you do that?
You don't go from Conte to Pochettino, a serial winner who's won 5 titles in the last 10 years. So then go back to Pochettino, who never won in England anything, right? Harry Kane's not stupid. He knows that he's going to have to move. He's going to do like what Teddy Sheringham did. He's going to leave at like 30, 31 years old, go somewhere and try and win some titles. Maybe Man United, maybe even Chelsea. Don't rule that out. But he might stay one more season because no one wants to pay what the club are asking for him. Yeah. But after that, he's a free agent. He can go wherever he wants. And I think this is where the planning needs to come in place. Like, they need to be thinking about what they want over the next couple of years at this club in terms of the board. Because if they don't, I'm telling you now, we're going to be a mid-table club again. And there'll be so many fans, including myself. I'm not renewing my season ticket if someone like Conte walks out. If he's gone in the summer, I'm not renewing my season ticket. I honestly, I don't care anymore. Because for me, in my opinion, I'm not going to see anything change if they let someone like Conte
that's fair.
walk out. And Kane does.
fair.
For me, it'll be even worse when Kane walks out. I'll be more upset that Kane walks out for the fact
Yeah, for
that
sure.
we've let someone who's come through our academy, right? Who's going to be the top scorer of Tottenham Hotspur in history.
Maybe, probably the
right?
Premier League as well.
Yeah, and probably the Premier League, because I don't think he's going to lead the Premier League.
No.
And the fact that we haven't built a team around him of level of players that are as good or close to his level, or build a squad of that kind of level to give him what he wants, which is to win trophies at Spurs, is the biggest criminal thing that this club ownership has done, in my opinion.
No, you're right. And the biggest criminal thing is, I think it's not. I almost even think as well, I'm looking at it, it's just Daniel, you know, like the kids say, Daniel Levy don't know ball. Like, so when those centre-backs fell off in 2019, he didn't see what we all saw. Like, these guys are finished. They're done. He still thought, I can bring Jose in and he will get the best out of him. But no offense to Levy, Jose was giving it the charm offensive on Sky Sports. He was like, I can sort their problems out. I know exactly what's wrong with them. Listen, I would be charmed by that. You got Jose Mourinho.
Right. Jay, do you not think that both Mourinho and Conte have come into the club thinking that the strength of the squad was stronger than it actually is?
100% Ian, because I remember watching Jose on Sky Sports News. I don't know who we played. I think we lost to Leicester or something.
It was a few weeks before he joined, wasn't it?
Exactly. And he was giving interview, and he was waxing lyrical about our squad. He was talking like, shit, you know what? You know that Ancelotti AC Milan squad ain't got nothing on Poch's Spurs. He was talking like the sunshine out of Lucas Moura's ass. I couldn't believe it. So even I was like, shit, maybe Poch is the problem. You know, maybe we have got more players. He got to our stadium, played with these players for a few games, and thought, fuck, these guys are shit.
That's right.
Yeah.
But Levy had bought his bill of goods. Yeah?
But
Jose bought Levy's bill of goods. These two guys were intertwined and they'd lied to each other to get there.
Yep.
So it's a relationship built on mistrust and lies right from the off.
Yeah, I agree.
Why do you think it's no different to when they started?
No, it's not. It's not.
It's no different. It's been right the way through. And just picking you up, just going back to the point you made about the centre backs 4 years ago. If you just got a focus that you want to make a profit, then you miss things because you're tunnel visions.
Yeah.
If he was a football man, like David Dean, Arsenal, and notice that Arsenal haven't won the league up to this year, but up to now, Arsenal haven't won the league since they got rid of David Dean in 2006. David Gill at Man United, who worked with Ferguson, who understood football.
Who's Arsenal's director of football at the moment?
Football person.
Edu, who played for the Invincibles. He knows football.
That's right, of course. And I'm sure Paratici does as well. But the problem is that these guys are given free rein to go out and pick the players that they want, and the club will back them and they'll pay the transfer fees. But obviously, they obviously negotiate, but they're not going to be stupid. And if Arteta says, "I'm desperate for this guy," they will go after him.
Yeah. And I think you're bang on, because I think this has been a great stream, because one of the big things was that the one thing I maybe hadn't looked at as much is that if you're slightly older, like I'm in a very unique age bracket with looking at Spurs, because I'm one of the few that might have seen us being way worse than we actually are now. But a lot of people are either a bit younger, so we've not won anything in their time. So that why are we not winning? Or people are older and we won, and it's like we used to win. Why have we rebranded ourselves as a team that doesn't win? So to me, being slap bang in the middle of those two eras, where it's like, okay, kind of we were kind of shit, and like we never won, and Arsenal were just winning everything around me. It's the shift of then being like, I guess sometimes it's, what do we need to do to win? And I guess that's where it gets to now. And it's like, I guess we're in a unique position where we have a manager who knows how to win for the first time ever. And it's not even like a Jose one. I do think Conte's not quite he's on the way out in terms of his tactics and in the modern day football. He's not obsolete, but he's on the it's going to decline the effectiveness because you can't play against opposition. And opposition are very talented at creating space and creating chances and manipulating. You're giving them 50% of the ball. You're giving them 50% of the ball to go and hurt you. Yeah,
If you had better players,
we wouldn't give them that ball, and that's what I'm saying. But I'm saying the style. I ask you this question, Ian: peak Arteta ball, peak Conte ball. Both managers are back to the maximum. Which team finishes higher?
I think Conte.
Do you know why, Jay? This is a conversation that we can really only have once the season finishes, because if Arsenal don't win the league, then people will have that discussion. You can play all the best football you want, but he still didn't win the title. If he goes and wins the title, then you can have that conversation, in my opinion, right?
Yeah.
Now, it's a good question because like this goes back to, this is what I'm going to bring this point up, right? And we'll wrap, if you guys are all right, we'll wrap up maybe in like 5-10 minutes. If you guys, but what I wanted to kind of bring the point is that when Klopp came into Liverpool, right? If you look at the squad that he had, it took him years he kept the same philosophy and style throughout, right? It was only when they only started really competing properly. I know they got to like 2 finals in his first 2 seasons or whatever it was, but they still didn't win them, right? People can say, oh, he got to 2 finals of that squad, but the fact is they didn't win them, right?
Yeah.
They only started winning them when he changed the whole first 11 and the squad, right? If you look at the first 11 now to the first, or the squad now to the squad then, there's only 2 players that were there now that were there then, right? Mm-hmm. Arteta is about 3 players in the Arsenal squad from when he took over that are there still now, right? I think Xhaka's one of them. I think Tierney's the other one, and I think
Holding.
Oh yeah, Holding, and sorry, Saka as well, right? Because Saka was just coming into it.
Yeah.
Now, apart from those players, everyone else they brought in. But what Arteta did, even when he finished 8th and 5th, he kept the same style of football. He was trying to build this philosophy, right? Same as Pep, when Pep came in, right? Even Poch, right? Let's give Poch an example. In his first summer window, do you know how many players Poch got rid of?
Yeah, a lot.
17 players. 17. We've discussed this on other stream before, but it was 17 players. But Poch, when he came in, he didn't change his style of football. He wanted he came in and said, I want to build a philosophy and a style of football at this club. And that's what he did, right? Until it got to the point where he needed that back in to take us to the next level, right? But he didn't get it.
The other thing also, Danny, was that he played a high press game and he needed younger players.
Yeah. Yes,
correct. Losing their legs. But coming on to Conte, I just pulled up the figures from the Inter Milan winning team a couple of seasons ago.
Yeah.
128, drawn 7, lost 3.
Wow.
In 38 games, scored 89 goals.
Yeah, it's a lot.
89. And I think Chelsea scored around the same sort of figure when they won the league with 93 points.
Yeah.
Look at this team. You had Handanovic in goal.
Yeah.
You had a back 3 of De Vrij, Skriniar and Bastoni. You had wing backs who were Hakimi. Ashley Young played a few games.
Perisic was there.
Darmian played a few games. And you go into midfield. I mean, it's down as Perisic. I think Perisic was a wing back, wasn't he? Perisic was the other wing back.
He turned him into a wing back, yeah.
That's right. And then you had Vidal, you had Barella, you had Eriksson, you had Brozovic, and up front you had Lukaku and Martinez, and you had Sanchez, who played quite a few games as well, Alexis Sanchez. So you look at the overall quality of that team, of that squad, against what we've got now. And Conte's not playing with the same hand. With those players, they won the league by, I think, 11 points, 12 points ahead of AC Milan.
You're right.
And it was phenomenal.
Yeah.
You know, they walked it. So if he's backed and if he's given the right players, there's no reason why he can't be competing at the top with City or Arsenal or United, whoever, Newcastle.
Would you take someone like a Tillemans in the summer?
I think we need a different.
I've been back and forth on this mentally, and I'm like,
I think I prefer Maddison, Jay.
Okay, because I was just thinking that if
I probably would too.
One of the things I noticed in our 3-5-2, like I actually think we not from a skill level, but from a profile wise, Winks would be more beneficial to this squad than Skip, because we have no, like, Winks can break lines. He can't do a lot of other things, but when he's on it, he can break lines.
I saw a performance from him. I think it was 2017 at Real Madrid. He was absolutely phenomenal, and he was up against Modric, and he just went backwards at the rate of knots. Yeah, I don't know what happened to him. It was such a shame because everybody, wanted a super homegrown player to come through. I mean, how many have we had? We've had Ledley King, Harry Kane. How many more have we had in the last 4 or 5 years?
Townsend came through.
But you've got
not to that level though. Not to that level.
Hey, listen, there was a moment that we all thought he could replace Bale, when he cut in from the
town. No, he had some gay. It's like Townsend, like when you see Townsend every now and again when he was playing for Palace, he'll pop up with like an absolute worldy kind of goal.
But he wasn't consistent, was he?
Yeah, it wasn't consistent enough, and that's the difference between a Ledley King and a Harry Kane and a Townsend. He was never consistent, because if he was, he would have stayed at Spurs and he would have been our left winger for years.
All I'll say is that if Winks put in the performances that Bazouma's putting in, I'm telling you, the abuse on the timeline would be generational.
I think with Bazouma, I was delighted when he joined.
Yeah,
he was terrific down at our place last season.
He ran the game.
I think he's taking time to get used to Conte's system. It does take time. These guys take years to build teams. You can't just build them in a year.
Well, Lubo, I'll give you an example. Partey, when he first came to Arsenal, he looked like the worst signing they made, and they absolutely spent like a waste of money. He was getting injured. He couldn't stay fit. When he was playing, he looked awful. Now he's the key to their midfield. He's one of their key players. Right? He looks like a world-class player. He looks unbelievable.
Maybe it's because he doesn't have to. Go, sorry.
No. You can jump in, of course.
No, I was just saying, like, maybe it's because he doesn't have to. I think a lot of our players have to do too much. Someone made a great comment in the comments. He said when Højbjerg keeps passing back to our two worst passers, we are doomed. And I just started smiling because
this one.
Yeah. I was laughing because it's true because what are you doing? Like, what's he? And it's that responsibility that you take on as a player to be. I am going to be the difference maker. Yeah. See, that's the thing. But when we played Liverpool, but to be fair, that Liverpool game was an anomaly because Ali played a great game. Winks played a great game. It was just a crazy game. So, but if I look at it overall, and I would say, well, I completely agree with you, Ian. I completely agree with the fact of this is a unique opportunity for Levy to do something right. And I think for the last few years, he's just been making bad decisions. He's made bad decisions. He's chased good decisions after he's made a bad decision. I actually think some of the decisions Levy's made have been, he's wanted to make the right decision, but he's just not. And there's certain things where he's not pulled the gun.
Do you think, just to add to what you're saying, do you think then that's because of the control that he wants to have? He just can't relinquish.
Yeah, he doesn't know ball. He doesn't know football, but he keeps trying to like Spence is a wonderful example of that. Jed Spence is a great example.
You know he's family friends with Spence's family.
Oh yeah, because he's seen Spence and he's in his eyes he's seen Kyle Walker regen. He's seen this is our Reece James.
Yeah.
And he thinks, and he said, listen, the guy smashed it. Probably sees him lock up Martinelli in the FA Cup. And he thinks, I'm gonna bring this guy in. Conte's gonna love him. He's a wing back. Conte plays wing backs.
But Jay, Spence should be, and hopefully will turn out to be a success. You know, a good player for Spurs.
I'm not sure, Ian. There's
But
something about him.
if you're paying, and I understand he's young, well priced, homegrown.
Yeah.
And you look at it and you think
He couldn't
everything's
resist,
there.
could he? He couldn't resist, could he?
But if you bring a manager in and you're paying him 15 million, and you're paying his staff as well per year, then if he doesn't want Spence, do you not run it by him because he hasn't played him?
Yeah.
So he's committed to a transfer fee over however many years. Yeah. He's committed to wages as well.
Yeah.
He's also taking precious years out of that kid's career. Okay, this year has probably been an education for him in terms of training. He's taken a step up. He's playing with much better players. Yeah. So I'm sure long-term, career-wise, it's benefited Jed Spence. But isn't it better if you're spending X amount of money? And in answer to your question, Bill, a few minutes ago, the decisions that he makes are financially driven rather than football driven.
Yeah.
Isn't it better if you're only going to spend X amount of money to spend it on players that the manager wants who he's going to play? Because at the end of the day, he's committed to Conte.
Yeah.
For a year and a half at 15 million a year plus an option of another year.
Yeah.
So he could be in for 37.5 million. Plus, if it's successful, Conte, I'm sure I read Conte wanted more money to extend.
Yeah.
So surely if you trust a guy by agreeing a contract of that size, you've got to let him run with the players that he wants.
I've got a theory, Ian. I've got a theory. I've never thought this theory before, but as you were talking, it came into my head. And I think it's very logical. Daniel Levy, does not want to either personally or appear to be a submissive man. He doesn't want to be somebody who is taking direction and order from somebody else.
100%.
I think, and I think that in Conte, he's met the first man that potentially he would take direction from because he's not in awe of this man, but you see when he interacted with Poch, he wasn't in awe of Poch or anything like that. He talked to him like he was his mate down the pub. Do you know what I mean? But Conte, he can't talk to Conte like that. I could imagine Conte telling him to get out. You know,
Jay, I'll tell you a story. I went to a breakfast charity morning where one of the companies that Richard Branson owns, one of the major directors, was doing a speech, and he was saying that one of the secrets behind Branson's success, and he's an entrepreneur, and he's invested in different businesses, different types of businesses, and the secret is that he brings in experts to run those businesses for him, and he lets them get on with it, because if you bring top people in, you're bringing them in for a reason. And because they're successful. Now, we've never had a manager who's won five championships in 10 years. I mean, Liverpool employed Klopp. I think Guardiola's possibly the only one who has won that amount of trophies.
Previous to the job.
Ferguson hadn't won 5 in 10 when Man United brought him in. So, you go back, Wenger maybe won, I think one maybe.
Yeah, one, maybe a little something in France and maybe a little something in Japan.
So we're in a position where we have an absolute top elite manager who is at the top of his game. He hasn't won the European Cup
Championship,
like Mourinho has.
Yeah,
but he's won 5 in the last 10. So he's up there. He's one of the best managers in the world.
Yeah,
let him run with it.
Yeah.
Give him a chance. Just say, right, you get on with it and give him that opportunity.
I think
don't micromanage the guy.
I think you're absolutely right. I think at this point in time now, for me, I'm just like, I can't, like, it's almost like I'm not even looking past Enoch or Levy out, because it's like, if they're leaving, if they're going to, everything's intertwined for me. Do you see what I mean? Because it's like, if Kane and Conte leave, by default, it's Levy and Enoch out. It's just by default. It doesn't even matter the circumstance that it happened, because he's got no goodwill or he's got no protection anymore. that's just the way it's going to be. So therefore, for Conte to stay, he has to be backed. And if he's going to be backed, it means that ENIC are sorting their shit out and they're going to actually try and finally back. So it's like, to me, it's very clear. If they leave, everybody's future is intertwined. And that's why, to me, it's so unique. If Conte leaves, Kane leaves. If Kane leaves, ENIC have to go. Yeah?
So are we going to finally get an ENIC out from you, Jay?
No,
if Conte walks out.
Because what if Kane says, I want to leave, but Conte doesn't want to leave? No one's giving me that scenario. What if Kane wants to leave, but Conte wants to stay?
I can tell you it's not that scenario. Like I'll speak to you off screen, but it's not. It's not that.
So everybody's intertwined. So that means ENIC has to do the right thing, because if they don't, they're going to be forced out of the club. And I don't mean forced out in like we're civilized. We ain't going to hijack a Sky Sports event or this or that. But it'll be like, Levy's an uncomfortable guy. He feels...
Jay, what will happen is the fan base will become disenchanted and they'll stop going.
That's probably the easiest.
Once it starts hitting them in their pocket, then it'll be, whoa, what's happened here? And they won't want to hang around.
And listen, and at that point, you will get the loudest, most booming, megaphone-induced ENIC out chant from myself. Like, and I promise you that, gentlemen.
Well, Jay, but before, I think we'll end it on that note, right? But before we do, I think it might come sooner than you think if it all goes tits up in the summer. I'm telling you that.
I'd love ENIC to succeed.
Yeah. So would I.
And bring premierships and European trophies, to the lane, and and they would be legends.
That's how
they would end up being icons. They'd be iconic owners.
And that's how they should bow out.
Do you know what, Jay?
Point, that's the time to leave. You know what I mean? That's the fairy tale for me.
Do you know what, Jay?
And they've missed such an opportunity here.
Yeah.
And you just think, why?
Yeah. Do you know what? I think I speak for most, if not all, Spurs fans. If they showed the ambition on the pitch, right, and for the team, right, besides the money streams that and avenues that they have to make money, if they focused the same energy on that they do, like Ian was saying earlier, on the pitch, and we go and did win a Premier League or an FA Cup, I think the fan base would love them to bits, because at least they've showed what all the fans want is to just see some competitiveness and actually try and go and win an FA Cup or go and win a Premier League. If that was to happen,
they never take a risk, Danny. That's the problem.
Yeah, that's the problem. And in my opinion, I just don't think we're ever going to see that risk. And I think it's going to be interesting to see what happens for the rest of the window. I do think I think Porro's a Spurs player. Yeah. So it'll be interesting to see if they go and sign a centre back as well.
Did you see Ornstein's tweet?
What did he say?
Ornstein says that Porto have gone for Lamptey to replace him.
Oh, Sporting, you mean? Have gone to...
Sporting have asked Brighton for Lamptey on loan.
Put it this way, as soon as they tie up a replacement, Porro deal is done, all right? Yes. And so I think I'm 99.9% sure that he's going to be a Spurs player, right? Yeah. Obviously, there's always that chance that Levy ends up changing his mind, but as far as I'm aware, he's going to be a Spurs player, and it's interesting to see if they do go for if they go for a centre back and try and get one in, because if they do, it's a good window, right? And at least
be a good window.
Yeah, and at least
we can be a good window.
Yeah, if they go and sign a good centre, and the names, like I've been told, if they were to go and sign one of those players, the fan base would be bloody happy with our transfer business this window. And I think you would have targeted two key areas in the squad that needed improving in the summer, right? But they didn't do it. And I think I think it probably does buy them a little bit more time for the summer.
It would buy them.
Yeah, of course it would.
I think personally, the FA Cup is there for us this season. I think it's there.
Do you know what, Jay? That's all I want to focus on this season. If as a Spurs fan, as much as getting top four is good for the club and for if Conte's to stay the manager in terms of bringing players in and maybe helping with the transfer funds, but for me, I would love nothing more than to see Tottenham go and win an FA Cup and watching Harry Kane lift that trophy with Lloris.
Hey,
it
listen,
would be
if we win an FA
fucking
Cup,
amazing.
if we win an FA Cup, I think Kane would stay if we finish 6th, if Conte was staying.
I think if Conte stays, we go and win an FA Cup, we finish 6th, Kane stays, I think.
Same.
Because it shows that the club are going to maybe give him a bit more, let's say, give a bit more control and say, look, we're not going to go and spend 200-300 million, but we'll give you 100 million. Yeah. And you can work with that, and then we'll give you some more if you sell any players or something like that.
We'll give you 4 40 million pound players. Pick wisely.
Yeah.
If you're looking at this season, you got Brighton or Liverpool, you got City or Arsenal, and you got United, who I think they've got Reading.
Yeah, someone.
So you're looking at 3. So you've probably got the 2 Manchester clubs and Liverpool, I would probably think. Yeah. And with our defence, if we don't strengthen. Yeah, I don't have much confidence in lifting that FA Cup.
No. Listen, if we got Brighton at home, maybe we could do them. Like Brighton away, I don't fancy our chances. We need some nice draw. Even this Preston draw. Like,
listen, we need to get through Saturday first.
Mate, I hate our biggest issue is intensity. Like when a team plays against us with high levels of intensity, they could be a League One team. You play against us with high intensity because of the lack of technical ability of some of our players. Like, even me, people think that I love Højbjerg. I rate him because he's a two-way midfielder. But we need somebody who's more technically stable than Højbjerg in that position. But we have way major surgery to be doing. So I agree.
I think someone like Højbjerg is what you want to have in the squad as a rotation player. Because someone like him, he can offer you a lot of good stuff, but on a consistent basis, if you want to challenge the higher teams, I agree.
We'll look at it like this, yeah. Imagine if Spurs had like Rodri, just if you had Rodri, you just dropped Rodri in behind Bentancur or Højbjerg. Just
100%. Even
if you'd actually be able to control games.
Yeah, if you look at Partey this season, he's an animal this season. He looks unbelievable, and if you actually look at the stats, right, in terms of goals conceded and goals scored, we're the 3rd highest goal scorers in the league, right? Yeah. But when you look at the defense and you reverse it, we're the 6th worst team in the Premier League. We've conceded 31 goals. Then next to us is Leeds on 33, Nottingham Forest 34, Southampton 35, Leicester 35, and then Bournemouth 42, right? So we can obviously see where the biggest problem we have in our squad is. And this is why I think it's so crucial that if we're going to target players now in January and in the summer, it has to be that defense. Because if you sort that out, I guarantee you we'll be a lot closer to where Arsenal are, a lot closer to them than where we are now.
Because if you don't, Danny, you're looking at 3-2s, 4-3s to win games. Like
100%. 100%. I agree. I completely agree. And before we go, I know we haven't talked about it, but do you think we're going to win against Preston on the weekend?
Yeah.
I think so.
Yeah, man. This is. I had a plan. I had an 8-point plan of how we're going to rescue our season. And listen, I'm just like Conte doesn't even make knockouts. He's made a knockout with us. Yeah, I think when you have base quality that we have in certain positions, like he's never had a Kane. Do you know what I mean? Conte's never had a Kane. He made, was it silk out of a pig's ear with Lukaku? And now he's got a Kane, and he's probably looking at this squad thinking, we don't need lots. He's probably looking at it like, I've done more with less.
We need a few, yeah. We
need a few. I think he's probably thinking it's closer than, and that's why I'm so like with the fans and stuff. I'm almost like, I completely get the frustrations and the annoyances, but I think the last year just makes me think it's slowly turning, but they need to take the handbrake off. They need to just give the control over. And they've been teetering over the last few windows. And I think the fans, with the Levy out, that's going to give it a little push, because no matter what, if he's going to sell the club in the next 18 months, do you think he wants to leave this club as the guy that couldn't win us a trophy in over 20 years? No chance. His ego...
Yeah,
I think his ego. I think for him, his ego.
Listen, if he walks out with £1 billion,
but he can get that now. Why is he staying?
Because
Jay, he's done his job.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, he
He's
has.
done his job.
I don't disagree, but I think that's like someone like Levy. Like I run a recruitment company. Personality traits. Deep down, you want to be unconditionally loved. Do you know what I mean? Deep down.
I believe he does.
Yeah,
right?
yeah,
But
yeah.
the problem is that he's too controlling to let other people do their jobs to allow him to get this praise.
Sometimes you
right?
have
And
to
that's
open your heart and let love in, Danny. And that's what Daniel needs to do. He needs to open his heart and let the love in. And then
he needs to see the love from Conte and Paratici and let them do their jobs.
Exactly.
And if he did that, we might win some things. But look, do you know what? But we're gonna end it on there. It's been nearly 3.5 hours. It's been an unbelievable show, and I want to thank everyone who's taken part tonight. Everyone in the comments, you've been amazing. Brilliant guests tonight with Mr. Lubo, Jay, and obviously Ian Meth and Mr. Dagul before. Before we go, I just want to let you guys kind of see where people can find you. If you want to like kind of show people where they can speak to you and interact with you if they want to.
Yeah.
So Jay.
J-Rated R, Twitter. You might see me floating around on different channels. I normally get 1 or 2 appearances before they ban me. So, like maybe I might squeeze another one out. But yeah, no, it's just been great. Thank you, Danny.
No, I appreciate that. And Mr. Ian Lubo?
At Lubo_61, happy to take all tweets, happy to interact. Always, we've got a great fan base. Let's share thoughts and opinions.
Yeah, no, definitely.
And I think what we're going to do is we're going to try and get this, I think, a little bit more on a regular basis, so we get the same kind of panelists. Because I think it's been a really good panel tonight. Might have 1 or 2 other people, but I think if you guys up for it as well, we'll try and do it a little bit more regularly. It's been a really good show.
Yeah, me and Ian have broken the back. Like, once you break the back, it's all good. And I think at the end of the day, it's been great because the thing is certain views I didn't even think of it because I just never. And when somebody actually explains it and says, actually, no, it's because of this and this and this, you're like, oh, actually, that's fair enough, because I'm just saying positions and this and that. But you're like, I've always been a fucking. We were the breakaway. I'm like, oh shit, because that happened before when I was a baby. I wasn't even. So us being a big 5 team that forced the breakaway, to me, it almost never happened. It's just a mirage. It's just like, oh, because as soon as I started supporting, we were fighting a relegation battle and we fucking needed Klinsmann to save us. So if that is your first impression of Tottenham, that's like shit. Oh, this is our reality.
Yeah.
And then he leaves straight away. And it's like that is the perfect encapsulation of being a Spurs fan. Is that
as the line of the song goes, and if you know your history, read up on the history, JD, you'll understand where all the fans are coming from, and then you'll bridge the gap from where you came in, and what you've seen since you started supporting the team, from the double team on, even the push and run team in 51 that Arthur Rowe managed.
No, it's true. I guess that's a great point. And I think that the history comment you made before it is almost like when you're like, oh, 30 years, and it's almost like you still need to go back further. It's still not enough.
I think like I learned my Tottenham history from my dad, right? He's in his mid to late 60s, and the stuff that he used to tell me, the games that he went, the finals he saw Tottenham lift European Cups. I mean, to me, the stuff that he's seen in his lifetime is just, I could only dream of seeing. I'm 30 years old, right? I've seen. Exactly. So I want to have a taste of some of this glory that he's seen. And this is why. But this is why the way I feel about the club, and I hope for the fans' sake that Conte doesn't walk out in the summer.
We deserve a trophy, and I know you can't really say that, but we really deserve a trophy.
We do.
I really hope we bring it.
Yeah, it's been way too long. It's been way too long.
I think most of all Harry Kane does as well.
Definitely.
And Lloris been two long-standing servants of this club.
And I think that obviously when you actually look at it and you look at it, it's like we've not done terribly, but it's like, I guess if you see yourself as a founding father of the Premier League as a top side and as a side that should, and even taking that aside and me saying we positioned ourselves well as a top four club, second, third, third Champions League final, and then to where we are now, that's a regression. And that's not for me to say I'm not appreciative of what the board have done, but we have clearly regressed, clearly. So even regardless of saying, Kane signed a big gas contract based off the fact that he thought we were going to kick on.
Yeah,
we all thought we were going to kick on.
Yeah, we all did.
We didn't kick on, and I think that we need to, as a fan base, I think expect more, but then we also need to be like, it's going to be hard. But as long as we are competing, I think that's the key thing. As long as we are investing, competing, we can finish 5th on 86 points if everybody else gets like 90 points. And I wouldn't be mad because we're showing that we can compete at the highest level. So
I agree. And on that note, I think we'll end it. And yeah, again, I want to say thank you, guys. Once I play the outro, I will go in the back end and we can have a quick chat before you go. So, thank you for everyone watching tonight. And it's been a great, fantastic show. It's been brilliant, and I can't wait to do this again with you guys. And before I go, I've got to do another Brian Dagul because I'm still at the moment. On that note, it is Levy out.